to figure out technical difficulties. That's why there's a pre-show, so everyone can take their seats, see
Hi,
things
guys.
Unfolding in real time.
Yeah.
Let's, okay.
Guys, if my audio sounds bad, please let me know. But there's also not much I can do about it. So
I think you're fine.
Okay.
I think. But, people feel free to, call her out.
Yeah. Hi, Randon. How are you? Thanks for being a day oneer.
Thanks
Just
for
like
sitting.
hour oneer?
I think so. Thanks for sitting on the line waiting for this to start.
Yeah. Yay, thanks.
All right, so let's hope everyone's doing okay. Did you refresh on Berserk before this, or is it all in your head?
Honestly, I was going to go back and read certain parts of Berserk, but then I kind of like unintentionally refreshed by going through all of the tweets under the Berserk Miura hashtag. So I kind of got a refresher that way, and then I did not go back and read it because I felt too sad. So
yeah, I understand.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm
just getting a few things ready before we start.
I'm gonna let out. I'm gonna tweet it again, and I'm gonna tell everyone, but people who are already in chat can hear first. If you guys want to, like, throughout the stream, just let us know what Berserk means to you, like how you got into it, like what kind of impact it had on you. I think like throughout the stream we can kind of read that, because I guess we don't want it to just be like our Berserk story. I think it would be cool to hear how Berserk has touched you. And I think it's really cool to see how everyone already came together. So if we could do that here as well, I think that would be really awesome. So I'm going to tweet that out to everyone, but everyone who's already in stream, feel free to get a head start because you guys showed up first. So first come, first serve.
Absolutely. Same thought. I feel like it's not just about our thoughts about it. It's kind of like, this is just, we're leaving it open. Anyone, wants to share their thoughts, their comments, any insightful tidbits about Berserk that we don't know, or all of that. We'll be reading that out throughout the stream.
Yeah. I guess it's like a good pre-show. It's like cool to see just like how everyone has come together. I've seen so many amazing comments and tweets and just like posts throughout the, online anime sphere, just in general, just, leaving their thoughts on how Berserk impacted them, what it meant to them, how they got into it, just like everything. It's just been really cool to see, even though it's for such a tragic circumstance. But I do feel like and kind of reminds me of the Kyoto Animation tragedy. I think it's cool to see how the community can come together when we all have like I don't want to say common enemy, but a common cause that brings us all together.
Yeah, exactly. Not a common enemy.
Yeah, I guess like, losing people you care about is kind of a common enemy, but I think it feels it's not exactly an enemy. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So 1 second. Are you still planning to tweet it out, or did you already?
I tweeted out on my account, but I will tweet that on our account.
No, it's all
well.
good. Just curious. Nice. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, so I guess I don't know if you wanted to bring this up to people, but you've had like a busy past couple of days kind of getting re-berserked.
Yeah, it's been a little hectic because I felt like now's a better time. I mean, it's not like not it's not a good time for
Yeah.
it, but I was like, if there's any other time to refresh on it, it's definitely now. So,
Yeah. Yeah, it
uh,
sounds like you've been busy. I don't know if you want to lead with that or if I'm spoiling too much of your plans, but
I'll say it in a bit. I just gotta. Sorry if I'm taking too long, guys. I'm just. I'm like while I was getting re-berserked, I neglected preparing for some stuff beforehand.
well,
So
yeah, I can tell. I'll tell everyone because I think it's impressive. So before we were talking about like, I guess no one knows, but we were going to talk about like mid-seasonal impressions up until the tragic news, and then we were both like in an awesome way on the same page because we were both kind of like, okay, we both feel like it's almost inappropriate to talk about anything else for our weekly podcast, especially something like mid-seasonal impressions. I don't know about you, but I felt like I've been in this weird zone of like I'm almost like overwhelmed with seeing so many great Berserk posts or content or thoughts in general.
yeah,
And then, but at the same time, it feels inappropriate to do anything that's not Berserk related. So I'm in this like weird, like catch 22 of like, I almost need a break because I'm so overwhelmed, but I don't want to do anything else. So I have no choice but to just keep doing Berserk related things. So then I think we both agreed that we wanted to talk about Berserk this week. And Onimaro hadn't watched the 97 anime. So he was watching that to try and watch it for Saturday. So I think he had like 2 or 3 days to watch it. I think it's 2 days. But at the same time, he also had to catch up to the last chapter because I kind of made him do it because I'm like, I think we need to talk about the last chapter. So he had like double homework assignments and he accomplished both by today. So that's really impressive.
Thank you for the compliment. I was planning to catch up to the manga. I figured that was par for the course, but I wasn't sure like how detailed you wanted to get. I was like, we could talk about each arc. But then if you didn't have that in mind, I was gonna be like, all right, well maybe that's not what she has in mind. Then I asked you, and you were like, okay, so I need to get on that.
Yeah.
It just, I guess, time just goes so quick. You don't even realize.
And especially it's tough to watch anything in like tough for me to watch enough seasonals in a week to get ready for Saturday. So I can only imagine how much watching you did.
I neglected my seasonals for the past few days. So
me too. So I think so. We're all on the same page, which is kind of cool. But that's why we're having a slow pre-show because you've done a lot of homework, which I think is very admirable and important. And I think it's cool because we'll talk about it later, but I'm glad you watched the 97 anime. I'll just say that. But we have a cool comment for Dwarfy who said, I had a really bad sports injury just before I had an operation planned and it ruined my sports career. Felt like the world was against me. Guts' story of anti-nihilism helped me a lot. And I think that's really cool to hear. I'm sorry about your sports injury. I feel like that's one of those situations where I hear about it a lot in high school in real time, but you never realize unless it happens to you just how, hurtful and impactful that can be. And it's great to hear that Berserk helped, Berserk and Guts helped kind of, I'm going to assume cheered you up a bit, but also maybe helped, put you back on the right track. I don't know, but I'm glad to see it left a positive impact on you.
Yeah, you also, speaking of doing homework or just kind of being really like getting re-berserked, Shaw, you were doing some really impressive tweeting.
I don't know about that.
Past few days, you were like really capturing. I don't know. I quickly popped into Twitter. I couldn't keep up with everything, but the few things I saw of people sharing and stuff that you were even sharing of your opinion was really interesting.
I was on a storm of just retweeting cool stuff. Like I tweeted my thoughts, but I saw so many cool things and I was like, nope, I cannot stop retweeting.
There was a lot of cool things. And I think I saw most of those because you were retweeting them. So I was like, this is really cool tidbits.
I'm glad it wasn't too overwhelming. I was going to like say something at first and be like, guys, I'm sorry. I'm just kidding. It's a Berserk week. I'm not posting anything that's not Berserk. So,
Yeah.
we have another cool comment from Emruth that I hope Miura will be looked back in a similar way as Tezuka for decades and centuries. I do think he will be. I think he's already kind of viewed like that. He was kind of one of the few people I think who was already considered a legend even in the middle of his life, which I think is really cool to see and very rare to see. But I do feel hopeful that that will happen later down the line.
Yeah.
So I concur. Raiden said that Berserk anime is what made me try other stuff other than the big three and became an instant favorite. It is like this interesting series that's like not like almost an entry level series, but I do feel like it almost did exist outside of the usual anime sphere because it has such a unique like placement in just like media in general. You know, if you are like a huge Dark Soul fan, you might find out that like, oh yeah, Berserk inspired that, and you see some of the cool like artistry, the cool similarities, and you might get in that way. If you're a fantasy fan, you might get in through that vehicle. Like, there's just a lot of ways that Berserk reaches outside just the typical manga sphere. So I think that's really cool. I'm gonna say your name wrong, and I'm sorry. Please don't take it personally. It's just kind of my thing. Quazas Omar? Can I just say Omar? I'll just say Omar. Berserk was a miracle to me. I was never a huge fan of the fantasy genre because I felt it was too fantastical to a point I couldn't connect. But seeing the way Berserk was able to humanize these absolute titans and larger than life characters still boggles my mind. Yes, I could not agree more. I think it's so interesting that, it's so interesting that for such an seemingly over the top series, the moments that I've seen posted the most and the moments I've seen celebrated the most have been the quiet, grounded moments. And that's something that stood out to me from, I think it was Super Eyepatch Wolf's video was the first time I saw it. And I think he phrases it really well that where Berserk shines is really the quiet moments in between the extreme violence, the tragedy, the battles. Like, it's almost like those lead up to the quiet moments instead of the quiet moments leading up to the extreme battles of everything. And I think that's very unique for the series, but I think it is kind of the essence of Berserk, and that's why it stands out for so many people.
Yeah. Okay, I think I'm good. Finally.
Yeah.
All right. Did you want to read anything else, or should we?
That's all we got so far, but those are some great comments already, and I think we're going to touch upon a lot of those similar sentiments throughout the stream. But it's cool to see. It's cool just to hear from other people too. That I feel like a lot of us are all on the same page.
Yeah, I think like Berserk, it definitely has cemented itself. Its place in manga history. But anyways, without further ado, let's get started. As we said, we will be reading your comments throughout the stream. If you want to share your own thoughts, feelings on Berserk, anything that even we don't know about it, we'll definitely be looking at that through the stream because it's not just about our thoughts on it. We kind of want to just get everyone's thoughts on it, so we not only mourn the passing of Miura, but also celebrate what he was able to create. All right, so let's get started. Welcome to the...
Sorry, that was nice. Sorry, please continue.
I thought that was appropriate.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Just Weaves podcast. I'm your host, as always, Onimaru, and I'm joined this week, or every week, by Shocking.
Hey, guys.
And today we're going to talk about the, unfortunate and sudden passing of Kentaro Miura, the manga industry's larger-than-life legend himself, Titan, recently passing, and as he's known for his lifelong work of Berserk, which is a manga that has touched the lives of so many fans. So we thought it would be appropriate to not only just mourn, the loss of such a giant, but also celebrate how much of an impact he left with his manga. And it's so telling, at least to me, that he didn't even have to complete it to have that, lasting impression and impact on people. Because at least in my experience, a lot of manga, you can't really judge it until it's completely over. But Berserk, like from very early on, and it could have been by virtue of how long it's been going. I think it's been serialized since 1989.
Yep.
But it's left an impression since like that long ago, and everyone's talked about it, and it's had an influence on so many artists, so many different media. So we thought it would be let's just dedicate the stream to it. Let's just talk about Berserk.
Yeah, nicely said.
Yeah.
I think that's perfectly said. It's so true because, it's Berserk is one of the few series I think we can say that it has been around longer than we have. So I appreciate that. It's kind of cool to see. In the same vein, I feel like I was thinking of like asking, how did you get into Berserk, or how did you hear about Berserk? And I feel like I personally have just always existed with Berserk around me. Like, I don't think there was ever a moment where I'm like, oh, Berserk, what's that? It's just something that's always coexisted in the anime sphere. Like, you always hear about it. It's never really gone away, even when it's been on hiatus. Like, you can just feel that it has a constant presence in the community and in, current works that have obviously taken inspiration from it. I just feel like it's just a constant presence, which is really cool to see, because it's not one of those series that I felt like I ever discovered. It was just always there. And yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I totally understand that sentiment. I definitely had a period in my life where Berserk wasn't ever present, where I wasn't even aware of it. But after I did catch up to it, then it was that whole ever-present feeling of it's there in the background, lingering, Miura's just crafting it, the next chapter.
Mm-hmm.
But early on, it was actually a friend that had recommended it to me a long, long time ago. He was just like, he got really more into manga than he did anime. So he kind of like search out, different manga, and he's like, oh, you got to read Berserk. It's so good. And then
yeah,
I didn't read it till years later. But then when I did catch up, I kind of like, because I knew it was a while between each chapter, I sort of just kind of fell off. I was like, you know what?
Yeah.
I'm going to just kind of wait. I'm going to just wait until there's enough chapters, and then I'll just catch up at my leisure. And in a way, I sort of took it for granted.
I think that's a common thing that I've seen amongst people, and I felt myself, is almost like I took it for granted, even though I was up to date. But I do feel like I did definitely take it for granted. I just kind of viewed Miura as like this like larger than life figure that would just be around. He would periodically update Berserk, and then everyone would kind of come together and we'd all read the chapter, and we would all kind of be like mostly excited that there was another chapter, and just kind of come together and talk about it and be kind of like reinvigorated with our love for the series. But I definitely, I think his illness was a secret from everyone. I think it's definitely not a case like Togashi, where it's kind of been documented of like, because Togashi has, he'll have comments in the Weekly Shonen Jump magazine of like his different back pain issues. So like it's been very much a public struggle for Togashi. But with Miura, there was always that sense of mystery of like, why is Berserk not being updated as frequently? Does it just take so long because the art is so good? Some people questioned his passion for the series, which was always kind of rebutted with like, look at how much detail he's putting into his art. Like, there's no way he doesn't care about it. But there was just always this sense of like question and mystery about like why he wasn't updating it. And now we have an unfortunate answer as to why, because he was suffering from, it looks like, a long-term heart disease that made it difficult, to continue to do art. But that's what makes it even more amazing and fantastic, is that he pushed forward to continue consistently making art as recently as, I think, sometime late 2020. I think it was late 2020. It feels like just yesterday I read the last chapter, but I don't know. Yeah, so it's just very impressive in general. I think
interesting how, sorry for cutting you off.
No, go ahead.
It just felt interesting how Miura kind of was in the background. He was just so mysterious in a way, like, and no one, like, there's questions about it, but he was able to kind of retain his private life and kind of do his own thing. And then you just knew that he was super well respected, and
Yeah.
he had amazing art. And then whenever he popped out a chapter, that would just be like kind of like a gift, and then that was
Yeah.
kind of it.
It's like a holiday. Every time he comes out with a chapter, you don't know when it's going to happen, but then it does, and you're like, yeah, let's go, Berserk time. So that was kind of what I experienced for the last couple chapters. I wasn't sure if it was 2019 or 2020, just my own bad sense of time. But he released like 3 chapters that year, and everyone was like, yeah, let's go. This is awesome. I think it was 2020, but
Okay.
don't quote me.
Yeah. I've been out of the loop since I think 2017. So 2017 was like when I read all of Berserk, caught up to the recent chapter, and was like, all right, you know what? I'm just not going to worry about, you know, when the chapter is going to come out. They're just going to
Which makes sense. I think that's like a very normal thing to just kind of wait for a bunch and then like catch up. I actually didn't start reading Berserk until the past couple years. I'd say past 5 years.
Okay.
Actually less than that, probably past 3 years, because I've been back in the game for the past like 5 years. So it definitely wasn't back then. But I think it's just so funny because you just like, I just knew about Berserk so much. Like I had most of Berserk kind of spoiled for me, and it's not like not salty about it, or you know, it just kind of is like it's a Star Wars kind of situation where you just know it. It's so embedded in the culture, so you just always knew kind of the big elements of the series. So like I knew about Griffith's betrayal, I knew about Guts's backstory, I knew so many things of the series, but I never got to experience it until recently. And I think once I heard that Casca was possibly coming back, because of course I knew about her too, that's when I caught up and finally started the entire series. So I started actually watching the 97 anime because I was really curious about it, and I knew the soundtrack would be good. And then I unfortunately watched I don't want to say unfortunately, because I don't want to be disrespectful to any of the Berserk adaptations. I don't want to be disrespectful. It's not the time. But I watched.
Yeah, go ahead.
I watched the Netflix CGI movies that I think they adapted Golden Age, and I can't really, slander them. They do have some like really good elements to them. So no disrespect, definitely a respectable product. And then I read the manga, so I've experienced Golden Age 3 different ways, which is kind of cool. And that's kind of how I got into it. But it was definitely an interesting, like, holistic experience of going through the anime adaptations. I did not watch the 2006 Berserk. Okay. 2016. I did not do the 2016-2017 Berserk, but I did experience every other anime adaptation of it. So
I had never watched the anime of it. I kind of just went right into the manga from the beginning, and I did not know anything going in. So I remember reading it, really enjoying it during the Golden Age arc, and then it was like a late night. It was like 5 a.m. I was like, I was into like binging manga until like late at night, and I was just in my bed, and it's like 5 a.m. and I got to like chapter 100 or 99 or whatever, that end of Golden Age chapter, and I just felt like a huge gut punch. I was like, now I know what everyone was talking about.
Yeah,
it was definitely something. But
it's an experience.
It was definitely an experience, but it was one of the absolute best arcs that I had read in manga, just the storytelling and the characters. But just so, as Shaw mentioned right before this stream, I just finally decided, you know what? I want to actually see the 97 anime because, you know, just briefly on the topic of adaptations, it has not had a good adaptation, but I've heard the 97 anime was actually pretty good. So I'm like, let me check it out. And I also really wanted to experience Guts theme in full glory. And it did not disappoint. So
that's good to hear. It was so funny because I knew about Forces, the track Forces, which is funny because it's like probably either the second or even the first most popular track from the anime, but it's played literally like 3 times. Okay. And I was like, going into it, I'm like, I want Forces blast at like every possible moment. Like if they're on a horse going somewhere, I want to hear Forces. But it was funny how it was only like played a couple times, but either way, it's a fantastic track. So
I questioned that too, in terms of the soundtrack, because I did not know what Guts theme sounded like before watching. So I was like, I want to see it in context. And then, so I didn't know when it was going to pop up. I was just like, wait, is this Guts' theme? And then I found out that was, and then I was kind of questioning every single time it played, because it played a lot.
Yeah.
I'm like, why is it playing on Griffith? Why is it playing on Casca? Why is it not just playing on Guts? Like, why? And I kept questioning it. And then I realized it's all about it's playing like when it has to do with Guts and his intimate relationships with people he cares about. So when it's related to him or how he sees himself with them, or even if he's tangentially in the scene or far off from it, it's still sort of related to that closeness he feels to that person. So that's why it was played. So I was like, okay, very interesting.
I think it essentially plays at every like major turning point in his life. I think that's what I have to look back at it. But that's essentially how I took it, is like every major like turning point in that period of like a revelation for him or like a very powerful moment. That's when they play it.
Yeah. Like the quiet moments. Those are actually the more, the more telling moments in Berserk. So, and it's whenever he's contemplating something or meditating on something in his life. And I think it ends up being a turning point because he'll flash back to that, or you keep remembering that. So, but enough about the anime. It was really good. It was a really good adaptation of the Golden Age arc. I did find out it skipped a few bits, but it did not really like affect the story at all.
I think it's cut out some stuff that, if I'm being honest, and I don't like judging it like this way, like it's a good adaptation because it cut out stuff that made me uncomfortable. I don't think that's like a fair point, but I think the things it cut out were admissible enough that it, as you said, didn't impact the main story. I think the only real issue I have with it is just like where it leaves off at the ending. Like that's genuinely my only complaint.
Just kind of just leaves off, and then that's kind of it. So
yeah, you're just kind of like, okay. Like if I didn't know, I'd still be like, this is weird. But knowing what we do know, we're like, okay, that they needed like 2 more episodes at least.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what I found amazing about it was how, and like the animation quality was not that great. It looked like it was on a really low budget. But so I was like, how is this still so compelling? And it is the directing, how they use the limited resources to kind of focus on the stills and the certain moments to still make you immersed in the story with the, the proper sound effects and all of that stuff. So I was like, oh, this is pretty good.
Yeah. It's kind of weird to mention now because I think Shabe says the video is unlisted, but he has this really great video called Berserk is Unadaptable. And it's an interesting video that looks at what are the strengths of Berserk and what do they need to be adapted, like, and it looks at adaptations as a whole, like what is the strength of an adaptation, what needs to be, what does it need to do to be a good adaptation. And one of the conclusions he makes, it's all his opinion, he's not saying like there can't be a good adaptation, he's just saying like his opinion. So I don't think there's any intended disrespect. Shapes is a very respectful person, but I'm just reiterating, I think it's no disrespect intended at all. He made this cool point that a lot of Berserk is very cinematic. It's all about like the sprawling background scenes, the detailed art, and it's not a very kinetic series. Like the motion of a sword swinging is not as important as capturing like the gravitas of the picture of like Guts holding the sword and like, it's like the after shot of like everyone he got. It's not about like making it move as much as a series like Mob Psycho would obviously be like a very kinetic series where the animation and movement itself brings that quality to life. Whereas with Berserk, it communicates so much emotion just from single shots. So I think that's part of the reason that the 97 anime works as well as it does, is because they know to put so much detail into the background shots. They know that like they don't need to make a shot move to make it powerful. They can just have a very detailed single shot and, as you said, use the directing or shot composition to emphasize what they need to. So it's a lot closer to the manga in that respect. And the strengths of cell animation kind of work a bit better than CGI or digital animation.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing that Berserk has, which it captured, which I felt like reading the manga, was the atmosphere. The
atmosphere is so important.
That's what it needed, because it's those quiet, contemplative moments when Guts is thinking to himself that really hit in the anime that was like, oh, this is really good.
Yeah.
And I'd even dare to say that if they really wanted to adapt Berserk, they could literally just take the 97 anime,
Yeah.
up the animation quality, and just kind of use the same storyboard and just the same thing, and then that's
I
it.
agree.
You could have just a better looking 97 anime, just updated to now, and then that would be a good adaptation.
I had similar thoughts. I think it's pretty much along the same wavelength.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see it's just kind of, it's always in such a weird space of like, how do you adapt it? What can you do? And I think the 97 anime in a weird way just gets a very bad rep. And I guess I do know why, but I don't know why. I think a lot of people kind of trash on it for looking older when, like, if you actually experience it, it looks essentially fine. I think it looks fine.
Like, it's one of those anime or stories that if you just don't, I'll put it this way, like if you don't pay attention, it'll just look bad and it'll be like, I don't want to watch this. But if you actually just pay attention to what's going on, you'll get engrossed, and then you won't really care about like, okay, this looks really like bad looking, but
and I've definitely seen a lot worse like cell animated series, and that's never like a good compliment. Like, I've seen worse is never a good reassuring compliment, but I've seen a lot of shots from the 97 anime that I was like really engrossed by. I think like the bonfire of dreams scene, I think they nailed that perfectly. I think it looks really good. And then the I'm trying to think of the CGI Berserk movies that I saw on Netflix. I've seen people argue that they look better, but I don't think they capture the atmosphere as well. But they do capture some scenes well that I think they kind of beat out the 97 anime in. Like, there's one it's the confrontation scene before where Guts faces off Griffin on that like snowy scene with the with the sun. Yeah, everyone knows that one. I think there's an official name for it, but it's escaping me, unfortunately. I think they pull off that scene a bit better. But, you could go either way between the two of them. And unfortunately, the movies cut out more than the anime series. So,
yeah, like, the anime only cut out some just extra plot points or just, a character or two. But it didn't really take away from the main gist of the story. But I think the thing is with and what makes it hard to adapt these things is that what's so strong about Berserk or about the Berserk 97 anime is the source material itself. So when you have a source material that's so strong, sometimes trying to do other things kind of gets in the way of what's already like really good. But sometimes a direct to screen, like screen adaptations, you always have to change a few things around to make it work for screens. But I think we should at this point really get into the manga because
do we want to do a quick reading comments before getting into the manga?
Yeah, let's do that.
Because we've gotten some good comments bringing it back to, this is a comment Randon made that Berserk Redux is a fan-made project, and they use the series and movies and video games to follow the manga as closely as possible, and it's pretty cool. I was not aware of that, but I will look into that because that sounds pretty cool. I always like fan-made projects like that like group a bunch of stuff together. So that's cool to know. My friend State commented, I woke up, saw the news, and said, "What the F?" out loud at 6 a.m. Absolutely shocked. There is no other piece of media that has had as much of an impact on me as Berserk. Guts' story is just so unique, and despite the troubles he's faced, he struggled on and went on because that's what Miura wants to tell the reader. Life can be harsh, but it can always get better. I agree. I think that is like how essentially everyone feels. It's a unique but really compelling character story. M. Ruth said, I feel like Berserk evolved my taste in fantasy from just the fantastical aspect focus to the human stories that can be told in very epic, large-scale world, and that's how I would later find my all-time favorite series. That's really cool to hear. And then Omar said, Berserk fandom is honestly a gem. All of the Berserk fans I've met have been some of the most interesting people to talk to because they all had something different to pull, but still connected with to the series. So we have a lot of comments that some people really just like the anime as it is and think that the 97 anime is a 10 and was perfect as it currently existed. And I think that's totally valid. And I'd rather see that opinion than the alternative. So So I like that opinion more than my own opinion. So I'll take
Yeah.
that.
I mean, I just having come off the 97 anime, I'm very torn right now between a 9 and a 10. It was just really
It's
good.
impressive. Yeah, I gave
Um,
it a 9 just because I was a bit disappointed with the ending because I think the Golden Age ending is like just so impactful and awesome. But I think a 10 is totally valid. I think
I'm
all
somewhere in
more power
between.
to you.
I'm sort of trying to weigh those odds of production stuff versus where, it ended and, my
How you
experience
feel.
watching it. So,
Yeah.
but either way, really, really good. Highly, highly recommended. If you ever want to start with the 97 anime and go into the manga, that's a good way of doing it too.
I think it's so cool because I would almost recommend watching the 97 anime and then going into the manga for the sole reason that you can listen to the soundtrack while reading the manga, and that makes my experience so much better.
I actually that's actually what I did right before this, catching up to
Hmm.
Berserk, the last 34 chapters I had to catch up to. I had the Guts theme on loop just
Yes.
playing the whole time I was reading it. I'm like, this is really enhancing the experience.
I'm so glad that you love Guts' theme because this might sound bad, but I think my attachment to Berserk would not be the same without Guts' theme. Just the way it's like constructed to make you feel almost like every emotion possible, but it's so complicated, but so like addicting to listen to. It's like it's my favorite like anime related track. It could be my favorite song of all time.
Yeah, no, it's tough because when I saw the hype surrounding it recently, after
Yeah.
talking with you and hearing some other
Mhm.
people mention it, I was like, all right, it can't be that good. Whatever. Like I was not
Yeah, you're like,
expecting
what's
much.
this? Yeah.
Yeah, and like I'm not that into anime OSTs or soundtracks. Like I'm
Hmm.
not like it has to be something like particular to kind of catch my interest. And then I heard it in the anime, and I'm like, wait, what is that? And then
What is that? Yeah. That's how
yeah,
you feel at first. You're like, wait a minute. What
and
is
then
that?
some people described it as like a really sad song, but it was more complicated than that to me
It
because it just
is.
didn't feel sad to me. I've heard tracks that are like hauntingly sad, and that's like part of it.
Yeah.
But there's like a hint of like romance, a hint of longing in it, a hint of like wistfulness. It kind of feels like very ethereal, like it's this is gonna sound weird, but it just feels like also when I hear for it, it's like a search for like paradise or a search for a
Yeah.
place that this person belongs. And it's like you feel so far from it.
Yeah, I think it's almost like impossible to describe. Like I think music in general is very difficult to describe, but Guts theme as a whole is just so tough to describe. It's like as you said, it's like this search. I feel like it's almost when I think of it and I try to describe it and I do a poor job, I'm like it's like the soul, like your soul is reaching out for something and it's reaching out for belonging amidst all the chaos of torment and everyday challenges. Like, and that's essentially Guts's character. Like, it captures his character so much where he has so much going on in terms of like pain, violence, anger, revenge, like every harsh emotion he's feeling constantly, but at the core of that is just his quest for belonging and peace. And that's the way they could capture that, such a complex emotion that we can barely put to words, is like ridiculous. Like it's amazing that they were able to capture that and it impacts so many people.
I mean, on what you're saying, someone just commented that the spread that you're using for the background is what he imagines Hirasawa based the track on. So
I could see that.
that could possibly be it. And on another point of what I was thinking of saying, it's like if people look at Berserk and never read it before, they might be confused why Guts' theme is just such a melancholic, quiet theme when they expect something way more brutal due to Guts' look. And that's just the complicated nature of Guts' character. It's like
Yeah.
who he is on the surface versus like who he is on the inside. And like pretty much since you're introduced to him until you go into like a flashback later, he's just been fighting with demons, his own inner demons, his whole life. And it's that plus the external things getting in the way of what he wants, that it's like all of that together, he's just constantly fighting for survival. And that's like the point with inner peace as well.
Yeah, it's so interesting to always hear. I feel like we're almost this sounds bad, like we're almost like the postmodern Berserk fans because we were sold Berserk on the complicated character narratives and the like themes of finding yourself. I wonder how many people were sold on Berserk by just thinking like it's a cool looking guy with the sword, he's slashing through some demons and shit, like that surface level entertainment value of just like the dark fantasy, you know, Guts sword go burr, that kind of aspect. Like, I wonder just like how many people were in that group, and then how did they feel when they were like, wait, there's a lot more to this than I expected.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I always question that too, because I feel like what sometimes like Berserk is pitched as this like really dark, like edgy, like, like kind of show that, this is like a very I don't know, like intense anime. You won't even know what to expect. But uh part of what makes it so resonant isn't just the violence. It's kind of Guts's character and fighting for his soul. But no one ever, I think, like mentions that when they're pitching it that way, I think.
Because I think I have heard people pitch it as like, yeah, it's really dark and it gets really dark and intense, but at its core, it's very like character driven. Like that's how I've heard it pitched recently. But it is like, how do you even explain that as like, how do you explain that well enough in a pitch for someone, you know?
And I think it also comes down to, I think what's really telling, if like maybe when you talk to a Berserk fan, it's kind of telling like what arc they like. Because if they like more of the violent, actiony arcs and dislike, like the more kind of quiet, contemplative arcs where it's more about, Guts, maybe they wouldn't be into it as for that. But I don't know. I feel like that's also ever present throughout.
Yeah,
Berserk.
that's the thing. I think it's you can find those in everything. Like you can find the really dark, gritty action traumatic scenes that haunt our nightmares and all. Like you can find that in almost every arc, but you can also find those contemplative character moments in every arc, which is why it's like, it's pretty consistently great. Like, there's no real wrong pick for a favorite arc.
Yeah. So with that, let's start getting more into the manga, because we are getting some questions as they want to know our favorite moments in the manga. Someone, Dancing Mad, says it was described to him as the Game of Thrones at anime at the time. He was really into Game of Thrones, and that sold him.
Okay, I wanted to sell Berserk to people on this, but I wasn't sure if that was accurate enough because I wasn't sure if it was political enough. Do you guys think, like, everyone in chat, Dancing Mad, like, everyone, do you guys think that's a fair selling point? Because I know we're all probably Game of Thrones fans at some point, or we've seen Game of Thrones enough to know. Do you guys think that's a good selling point?
Yeah, because I feel like what's undeniable about Berserk though is the brutality. The brutality is there, and Game of Thrones is known for that brutality. So I guess you could argue that, though Game of Thrones is character driven, but it's like it spreads throughout so many character point of views, while Berserk is Guts. It's mostly
That's the thing too. It's like, Game of Thrones is very much an ensemble cast, but this is very much Guts' story. And they do have political elements, especially in Golden Age and then later in Falcon of the Millennium Empire. Like, you do get those political aspects, but I do feel like it is kind of like in the background to the battles, like, whereas contrasting like Game of Thrones, the battles are the background to the politics, it kind of flips on those. So I wasn't sure, but if I have enough people saying that you can sell it as Game of Thrones, I'm going to do it because that's a good selling point. I'm going to do it.
It is, and then they can be surprised by what they find, what they find. They came for the brutality. They stayed for, the existentialism.
We have AJ in the comments saying that he was one of the people who wanted the rawness and he watched Berserk because he thought it was cool that inspired Dark Souls and basically just wanted a fun and bloody romp. And as soon as I realized the serene contrast is where the soul of the story was, it became an instant favorite. So that one's literally like came for the raw action, stayed for the existential crisis.
That's it for the, for Guts' humanity. It's that fight for humanity and the his whole question the whole time is it okay to kind of just exist for the sake of existing and not have like some grand purpose? I mean, what I really liked about, and I keep saying we're going to talk about the manga now, but I'll just get into it.
We're getting there, but I do need to know that I have the backing of the Berserk fandom to call it the Game of Thrones of anime just to get more people on it. I just need that cosign.
I think it's fair. I think at that point, I think it's fair because Game of Thrones also isn't just the brutality. Game of Thrones also has like a heart and something it's trying to drive towards, But what I really enjoyed about reading Berserk, especially the Golden Age arc, which I think is probably my favorite arc,
Mine too.
not tied, but like slightly above. I did really enjoy the Falcon of the Millennium arc,
Empire.
Millennium Empire arc. Yeah,
Everyone abbreviates it as FOTME, and that's almost harder to remember. So Falcon of the Millennium Empire.
The Millennium Falcon arc. There you
Millennium Falcon.
But what I really liked about reading it was it just felt so, and I guess because it's so focused on guts, it just felt so intimate. Like just the experience of just reading it. You're in this guy's head. He's dealing with. He keeps having flashbacks. He's kind of scarred and dealt with those things in his past. He struggles to connect with other people, even though he, in a way, desperately wants to, but he can't bring himself to. And then how his, like, it's all just a steady development. Like even his relationship with Casca is like chapters and chapters and chapters in the making.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the Golden Age arc is just such a very special piece of literature, even just on its own. And I think there's a reason it's the one that's constantly adapted first. And you see that at least in like 97 anime, they're like, okay, we're making this one. And I don't know if the other arcs were finished at that point, but like Golden Age will always be the arc that I think Berserk is just known for. And even though there are so many other memorable parts, and there's a lot more to talk about, but Golden Age is just so special as a backstory arc and as just an introduction to the main conflict of the series. And it has this very like Shakespearean tragedy element to it where the character's own flaws are the cause of their downfall. And I'm not saying...
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say like the only thing, and I could be wrong here, but I feel like what makes Golden Age stand out so much is probably the only arc that you could say is kind of complete on its own. Like it has its whole beginning. It takes you all the way through Guts' like when he was young, the childhood, got in the band of the Hawk, and then all the way to that culmination, to the end, that it ends in sheer tragedy. And if that was the ending of the series, it would be a tragic end, but it could be an end.
You could end the series at that point and feel like you had a fulfilling experience.
And it could have been like how the anime ended, where Guts, was fueled for revenge and continued on, and that was kind of it.
Yeah. But yeah, I've like the Shakespearean tragedy aspect is something I've picked up on as like, it's not just saying like this thing is good because it reminds me of Shakespeare. Like there's very specific elements that play into it that I think make them so compelling and like long lasting. And that idea that Guts was unable to connect with people due to his childhood, which was traumatic in many ways, besides the one way people always mention, he lacked a true father, parental figure. He was always kind of trying to like prove his own self-worth to other people and to himself. So when you see some of the decisions he makes, it's like obviously a foolish decision for us, but they back up the foolishness of his character in such a compelling way that you understand where he's coming from. Like everyone looks at like him leaving Griffith and the Band of Hawks to find himself. It's like, oh yeah, that's kind of foolish. Why can't he tell that like he belongs with them? That's where he's most happy. But it's like, to him, you can see everything leading up to that, why he would make that decision. And they make it such a compelling point. So those are one of those things where in a weaker series, you just feel frustrated because you're like, this character is making a stupid decision. But in Berserk, it just plays into the overall tragedy of the downfall of so many characters.
That is so fresh in my head, and I just have to say, like reliving that hurts so much. But I was also like, I think you articulated that really well, because I couldn't be mad at him. I was just like, this is good for him. This is self-actualization. He's doing something for himself, But then to realize like the irony of it, like later, that I think Griffith, like he was the one exception. I think Griffith did see him as an equal, and the irony that he heard that line about not being an equal, that's what drove him away, to then come back and be like, oh, why do I have to realize that what I had was always here, and it's already too late, and I already lose it.
Yeah, it's so tragic because he wants to be Griffith's equal, and Griffith always viewed him as an equal, even though by Griffith's own definition, Guts was not his equal. But we're not sure if Griffith actually meant what he said, if he was just kind of like talking game to the princess to try and convince himself that's what he meant. But I think they were both each other's exceptions, which made it so compelling.
I think Griffith's pride could not
Mhm.
bring him to admit it, but I
Yeah.
think, and he couldn't even, I don't think he realized it himself
Until later on, yeah.
subconsciously, where he
Yeah.
was in that eclipse scene and he was like, he was the only person out of thousands of soldiers that
Yeah.
made me forget my dream.
That line gives me chills. Like, I got chills right now. I was thinking about it before you said it, and you saying it again. I can picture everything in perfect clarity, and it gives me chills thinking of that. That is like such a ridiculously powerful line. And that's among so many powerful lines. But that one, I'm just like, oh my God, chills.
Yeah, and I think like the first time reading Berserk, I couldn't, I don't know, like I I didn't get Griffith. I didn't get what he was like, what he was going for. He just felt like how he is to the other characters in the show. This divine, kind of being that's sort of like you can't read him. He's sort of an enigma, and I don't get why he's doing, what he's doing. And then by the end, he betrays them. He's like, why would he do all of this? What's wrong with him? He's so evil. And now like rewatching it and kind of re-experiencing it, and I was definitely at a different point as an anime fan back then when I did initially read it. But now it's like, oh my God, he's such a well-written character. And like everything, what was that?
Oh, no, go ahead.
Everything he did though, like it wasn't completely out of left field. Like I get it. Like it was just, you have to kind of pay attention, but
Yeah.
it was there. It was all written that
It was all there.
that he was struggling with his dream, but because he had already sacrificed so many and he'd gone so far and he was committed to it, he did that. He trudged forward, but then he didn't realize how much Guts meant to him, and then Guts leaving made him do like the only stupid act
Probably.
in his whole career.
Yeah, it's like we're kind of ridiculous too when you think about it. Like, his way of blowing off steam is seducing a princess. I'm still kind of like as if he could have done that the whole time, and he's like, nah, this is
like he kept her this far like the whole time. Like, all right, you stay here. I'm just gonna flirt with you, and then like Guts leaves. Like he's just like, hey baby, what's up?
what's up? Yeah, I think it's just so wild. I forget what I was gonna say. Griffith is like, first off, the fact that this is probably the most impressive writing accomplishment I've ever seen is the fact that Griffith can do everything he's done and people still feel some sort of positive emotion, whether that's intrigue or like he's well written, like any positive emotion of like understanding could arguably make him like the best written character of all time. Like he has done so many fucked up things along the way, and we're still not just sitting here saying like fuck Griffith, like fuck him. Like the fact that we have any emotion that's not hatred or anger is ridiculously impressive.
Didn't Gut say at one point later on that you can't stay mad at Griffith? Like he said it like a few arcs way after Golden Age, now that he's kind of been recovering. Didn't he say something along those lines? Like
I feel like he said a similar sentiment, but like he's still angry at him.
Yeah, of
but
course.
it was still like, well, as one should be. But like he said something along the way of like he's always been captivating, I think, but I gotta double check. I think you've read it more recently than I have, so I wouldn't be surprised if that's what he said.
I do have a lot of gaps, so I caught up, but I was like not remembering things, and I am super fresh on Golden Age, but then everything else is kind of like a blur.
Kind of a blur. It all goes by in a blur. But yeah, I think Griffith is just such a like ridiculously captivating, interesting character. I think you could argue he's one of, if not the most complicated characters, one of the most complicated characters. I think it's just like everything about him is so mysterious, yet you can understand him from the bits and pieces we've seen, both from his own internal thoughts and from the pieces we've gotten from like Casca and Guts, like everyone around him. We've gotten such an interesting picture of him, and it's just it's so interesting just to think about him. Like I could think about Griffith for hours, still not figure him out, and still want to think about him more. And that kind of like, it's almost like an earworm, but for a character where you're just like compelled to try and figure him out like this puzzle piece, even though you don't have all the pieces.
I think the most interesting bit that I read during everyone kind of sharing their thoughts about, Miura and interviews and stuff like recently, and I know this is like metatextual, so it's like you're supposed to be able to get this from the reading, but it's interesting to see that Miura had an interview where he stated who Griffith and Guts were based on, which was like himself, like and a friend of his that wanted to also work on manga. I don't know if you read it or maybe you
Yeah.
retweeted it.
Yeah, I think I remember what you're talking about. It was kind of like they were both pieces of himself, and it was like when he was trying to achieve things, when he was looking up to someone, he was guts. Like he was struggling to try and become the best, trying to get to that level. But once he realized he had become the best and had become like, the most talented or the most accomplished, he was Griffith. And like it was like both roles kind of represented different parts of himself and different emotional feelings he's had. And that's really cool to hear. Like you can feel both the struggling aspect of Guts and then also the, let's say, responsibility and ambition of Griffith at the same time.
Yeah, because Guts is supposed to be depicted pretty much as the underdog that has to start from the bottom and has to just fight for everything to earn his place in life, both belonging, the right to exist and to kind of he's had to fight for everything. Where Griffith, who's like way more regal and noble and seems like this divine person that could have anything he wants, is just sort of just I don't know. He feels otherworldly, and he just
does.
keeps rising and rising higher and higher, while Guts is just living each day, just trying to focus on the task at hand and survive. But just seeing that, like hearing how he envisioned both, I was kind of visual. I had that in mind while I was rewatching, and it kind of like helped kind of understand Griffith a little more, because it was the whole thought of he keeps rising higher and higher, but maybe this isn't even what he wants. He's just kind of doing this to feel like because he had a line about saying like the thought of being born just to exist doesn't sit right with him.
Yeah, it's all about like having a dream, having ambition. That's like what makes a man like above others. That's like what gives him like purpose. And that's he could only view someone as his equal who was also chasing their dream. And naturally for Guts, he's like, I'm just lucky to be alive, bro. Like I have no time to try and get dreams. But what's interesting is I was when you're thinking about all the different things that Berserk has influenced, like even so many of the tropes that might not seem applicable, it's obvious like Dark Souls, kind of similar genre carryover, like you can see that. But one of the popular tropes I've seen talked about recently is the mountain of corpses trope that you see at the beginning of the eclipse, where Griffith is thinking about like all of the mountain of corpses that he's trampled on to get to where he's at. And it's like emphasized by that one young boy who wanted to be a knight, who I think got killed in battle. And that person really like stuck with Griffith, is like, he gave up himself for my dream. And it's that, I guess it's like the trolley. It's like, well, what's that, like trolley fallacy or something? It's like, well, do I stop now and all these people's lives have gone to waste for nothing? Or do I keep going and more people die for the sake of my dream? And that was like his internal conflict. And that's something we've seen in other series presented slightly differently. Like that's in Vinland Saga. You see that in Attack on Titan with Erwin. He's thinking of like all the different people who he's trampled on. And weirdly enough, you also see it in Blue Lock, that soccer manga that's like really extreme. I don't know the context of it. It sounds kind of funny, honestly, but you see it everywhere. So even common tropes that we've seen everywhere and possibly in other stories, like they could kind of be traced back to Berserk. I'm not sure if it was the original, but it's popular enough for me to think that it's left an imprint on other people.
Yeah, definitely. And enough to at least, even if Berserk maybe didn't invent it, enough to pioneer it, keep being used.
Yeah.
But I think the difference with Berserk, as in those other shows you mentioned, is that Griffith was like towards the end in the eclipse, he was kind of convinced or to embrace it, to kind of just be like, you're evil, and you know what, you never had an issue with this, so just accept that they were all and he lost his guilt towards it, and then he just became who he was.
One of my favorite things is I saw one comment that someone was doing like unpopular opinion. The people in the Band of Hawks would have given their life for Griffith anyway, so it's not like that immoral that he sacrificed them all for his sake, because they would have done that anyway in battle, which is like a very interesting take. But it did have me thinking that if the eclipse just happened and it just, as it existed, let's just say all of the Band of Hawks were sacrificed and Griffith was brought back as, one of the gods' hands, you could almost make an argument that like they were willing to sacrifice themselves for Griffith's dream. And then you could have some good like counterpoints that like, no, as Guts points out, they all have their own dreams and they've just attached themselves to Griffith's dream because they believe that could lead to that. But it's like, begs the question, what's the difference between Griffith sacrificing them during this demon like the eclipse versus them dying on the battlefield? Like, what's the difference? They're still dying for that sake. And that the fact that you could almost have this like moral quandary over this situation is like interesting. And then the thing with Casca comes in and it's just so reaffirmed that like, nope, he's an asshole. He wanted to do this. He did that specifically to get back at Guts. Now there's no justification. And I think it's so impressive that they have that thing as like, no, there's no justification. He's an asshole.
Well, I think like it's just interesting because I was trying to see all the foreshadowing, which obviously I wouldn't have seen the first time I read it. So now I'm like, okay, I know what's going to happen. And it was interesting because I didn't remember enough that I was in a good place to just re-experience things. And I was like, okay, I don't remember where this is going, but I know where this is leading to. So I was picking up to try to see if there's any foreshadowing. And then the first time that Guts and Griffith fought, it was that wager of, he kept telling Guts, if I win, you are mine and you will live and die, by my choice on the battlefield, kind of like everyone in his army that he chooses how they live and die because he owns them. They're, and that just kept making me flash back or flash forward to the eclipse and being like, well, he did own them. And then, Guts left and got away, and that he saw that as like the biggest betrayal. So once that spiraled and everything happened to him, all he could see in Guts, like all he could see towards them was a complicated, swirl of emotions, but mostly he had that hatred and he wanted to hurt him just as bad as he hurt him. It was just crazy because I was looking at him being so feeble and weak. And when Guts just first walks in to hold him, Griffith's first motion is he puts his hand at Guts' throat.
Yeah, he was like, you can tell he's not just like greeting him. He's like, fuck you.
Yeah, like if I had any strength in this arm and my tendons weren't cut, I would be choking you out. Yeah. And then he's just staring at him and Casca every time from the tent and when they're hugging. And like the way he's staring, which has been shown throughout most of the show, when he stares at certain people a certain way, it's like he's like a hawk eyeing its prey. And he did that with
that's a good point.
The minister. He did that with something else. Every time he was going to get them, he would be eyeing them. So then he was looking at Guts with Casca that way. So in that scene, all I could see is he's looking at how bad he can hurt Guts. And he's like, oh, this is his weak point. Okay, let's do this. Because Guts leaving just destroyed him so much. And the irony that within a day, it just ruined his whole dream.
Yeah, it just absolutely ruined him. It's so interesting to think of the different angles. The fact that anyone even wants to defend Griffith, like I'm not co-signing the like defending Griffith train. I'm not. But the fact that you can kind of see his perspective before committing such acts of atrocity is interesting and shows how well written he is. Like the fact that we want to think about where he's coming from and want to think about it. And I think to a certain extent, when I first watched it, I knew what was going to happen. The fact that I was like, I like Griffith. I want to kind of defend him, but I know I can't. That impulse.
I'll put it this way. Griffith, and I'm going to get back to a few things mentioned in the comments too. There was a few good points I do want to get back to. And also, guys, I know we're spending a lot of time talking about Golden Age and the Eclipse. If there's a specific arc you want us to touch on, just to speed us along, let us know.
Sorry, we get too ahead of ourselves. But
Griffith is ever present, so it is reflective of the whole manga. But I think with Griffith, it's all you can say is that his actions, which is part of good writing, is it wasn't black and white. I don't think what he did can be justified, but you can understand why. It's not like he just did it to be pure evil. It's part of it. But there was definitely motivations. There's definitely things that Guts did and all of that led to that, But at the end of the day, what is fucked up about it is that Guts' reasons for leaving him were not bad. They were for his own good. and things that he wanted. He didn't do it out of malice toward
Yeah.
Griffith. And if Griffith couldn't understand that, then Griffith is a toxic friend,
But it was also plays into the kind of tragedy aspect of it, like especially the I do think it is reminiscent of Shakespearean tragedy, like in Romeo and Juliet. The reason that tragedy went down was a miscommunication between people, like the message wasn't delivered, and that's something that's evident through Berserk. Is like there's no communication because all of these characters are so caught up in their own shortcomings and trying to become their own people. Like they didn't have a conversation of Guts being like, hey Griffith, I'm going to take a leave of absence because I want to become my own person. And Griffith never asked, why are you leaving? Like there was never a conversation. There was never any communication between anyone of their intentions.
Guts did have that conversation, but
with
not with Griffith.
Yeah, with Jadu.
Yeah.
Jadu, am I saying his name
and
right?
The guy who hates him, Corcus.
I like both very good characters, by the way. Both very, very good characters. But it was also like Guts being Guts. He's not going to come out and say like, yeah, I want to be Griffith's equal. I need to have my own dream. He's never going to be that straightforward. It's not something that you could just admit that easily when it's like, he has to go out and do his own thing. But as you said, there is a toxic element of Griffith. He viewed them as people he owned, even without realizing how much Guts meant to him. So
yeah, I mean, like it's also low key was kind of cool with Corcus dying by demons. I was kind of cool with that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think Corcus is such an interesting and important character that gets a lot of shit for good reason. But like, he is kind of that like everyday guy who's like, you guys all have dreams and shit. I just want to survive.
He's the pragmatist or the realist. Like, come on, guys. Like, let's just.
We are about to live our life. Like, come on. Like, stop getting caught up on this shit. And of course, he's the biggest dumbass because Guts wouldn't have joined them if he wasn't a dumbass in the first place.
But also, if he had listened. Ironically, if he had listened to Corcus, none of this would have happened for Guts. If he's like, hey, bro, put your pride aside. You got everything you want here. Yeah. Why the hell are you leaving?
Yeah. So it's interesting. I'm glad we're both on the same page. We both love Golden Age, but I guess
let's get to a few questions or a few comments here. So back to the corpse trope, Harris Vasio said, the reason the corpse trope is more effective with Griffith compared to Vinland Saga and Attack on Titan, in my opinion, is because it was the result of a completely selfish dream and choice.
I mean, I do think in I think you could argue in Vinland Saga and Attack on Titan, it's also selfish. And, but it is played, in Attack on Titan, it's played a bit more straight. It's like Erwin reflecting on all the people he had killed and how he's like, somewhat regretful that it's for a selfish reason, like his dream, but like he still went through it. But that was kind of like the end of his character arc. With Griffith, it's like, yeah, here are all the people I killed. Got to keep going. Let's go. Let's keep doing it.
That's the beginning of that's the culmination or the beginning of his heel turn when he becomes evil.
Yeah, it's like realizing everything that he did that was fucked up, and he's like, yeah, this just fuels me. Let's keep going.
All right. Then we got Carl Malik here saying the main difference in the way they die is they were prepared to fight to the very end for Griffith in battle. They were never prepared to die for him, as many people like to say.
Yeah, that's so true. And that's something that's brought up as a great counterpoint to in the discussion that I've had is that Griffith views these people as they are just attached to his dream. But as we see in the Bonfire of Dreams scene with Guts recounting everyone else's dream, he's like, they all have these individual dreams. They're just attached to Griffith to try, in the meantime, to try and achieve their own dreams. So Guts could view them as individuals, but Griffith could not view them as anything other than tools, except for Guts.
What I love about Berserk, though, and I think that's why it's touched so many, is that all these themes are just so universal. Like, it's just things that we all kind of feel, and it's sort of just, so that's why I think it's easy for it to resonate with people. Denji-kun says, the first to make that kind of rivalry is Devilman, I believe. Something similar happened in Susanoo 2, also by Go Nagai, but I have only started it, so I'm not sure exactly. Okay, so maybe Devilman. I never watched the original Devilman.
Devilman, I did see Devilman. Crybaby, I didn't read the original manga, but I do know it was a big influence for both Berserk and Evangelion. So
yeah, definitely.
I don't know if it has the Mountain of Corpses trope, but I mean, it does have. You can see reflections of Berserk and Griffith and Guts and Berserk imagery in Devilman. It all goes back to Devilman.
Elijah Kai VA says Griffith remains my favorite antagonist in fiction. Absolutely adore him as a character. Uh, Amruth says, "What do you guys think of Luca from the Conviction arc? I love how a character like her exists in a world as cruel as Berserk's."
Yeah, I think she's really cool. She's just kind of one of those characters I never really thought about that much, but I passively appreciated her as like, you know, she's kind of a bro. She's looking out. She's, relatively wholesome and looking out for people, and that's very rare in Berserk. So,
Um, you know, you know how I said I had gaps in my memory
yeah,
for certain parts of Berserk. This is one of those gaps where I'm like,
yeah.
I don't know.
She's the prostitute. She's the nice prostitute in Conviction who takes care of
Okay.
Casca.
You know what? I actually know who she is. Also because I just sort of wikied her, but because
I did too. Yep.
she's in the recent arc. She's in the
Yeah, she is. Yeah, she's living in Griffith City.
She helps out Erica and Rickert in the recent arc.
Yeah, she's a bro.
And I didn't know she, I looked like a brothel, but I wasn't sure.
I think it's a brothel.
Okay.
I'm not sure, but she has an inn, I guess. I looked her up too. I completely forgot about her. I'd be lying if I said she made a great impact on me. But in the process of reading Berserk, I appreciate characters like her to.
I mean, I like,
be a bro.
how upstanding she is. That was pretty
Yeah.
cool. You wouldn't expect it.
Yeah.
And she take care of them and like lets them, they hear that Rickard slapped Griffith and they're not like, oh, get the hell out of here. They're like, oh, let's help you out. Let's help you get out of here. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, big props to Rickard too for slapping Griffith. Did what we all wanted to, but was the absolute legend.
The balls on Rickard, it's just
when he did that and he's like surrounded by all these guys who are about to take him down, and Griffith's like, nah.
He is surrounded by demons.
Surrounded by literal demons, like, fuck this dude. I'm like, yeah, let's go, King, let's go.
Yeah, the guy beforehand tried to show him the chamber of the war demons to intimidate him, and then Rickard's like, nah, bitch.
Bitch. Love that.
But I think one of the things I like of the Millennium of the Millennium Falcon arc,
Falcon of the Millennium Empire,
which is right before the recent arc, the Falconia arc. No,
Fantasia
arc, Fantasia arc is I like and some people didn't like it, but I like the tone shift where it starts to become a little more lighthearted, and like Guts starts to have like this JRPG style crew. Yeah. With the witch, like the mage, the kid swordsman, and everyone like the ragtag team riding together with him, and he's able to kind of open himself up more to other people, see more of the light and the tone. There's like a lot of fun moments. There's comedic moments. Yeah. It gets brighter for him.
Yeah, I think that's a tough one. It's kind of tough. It's kind of tough either way because I know there are some complaints about the comedy, and I'll just say like I'll never compliment. I'm never going to say that Berserk's strength is comedy, but I love what it means for Guts that he can have comedic moments and he can have a group of people that he can be a normal person with and can look out for and have adventures with, and that, he can start living as a normal person again. I think that is a really important, powerful message.
I mean, that's why I think it's good because of that contrast that, hey, this guy that saw no hope and just saw his own anger and fury and just darkness, and he was just by himself for so long. That's what fueled him, can now have the chance to open himself back up again and have those lighthearted moments.
Yeah.
And have people that help him take care of Casca when he couldn't do it all by himself. And he's just like in the recent few chapters or something, he was like just so thankful for it.
Yeah.
Thankful to them. Yeah,
because it was just, it's so cool to see them too. I'm so glad that they play that role. I guess that is a semi-good transition into talking about our favorite spreads and pages in Berserk because, it at least transitions well to me because chronologically after Golden Age is the Lost Children arc, which is right at the beginning of Conviction. Lost Children arc is one of those very interesting arcs that some people have argued is a filler arc, which pisses me off because I hate when people misuse the word filler to mean arc I don't care about when it is 100% canonical and important in the story. But admittedly, if you took a step back, you could essentially remove the Lost Children arc from the series and you wouldn't really notice that much in the overall plot. But I think the Lost Children arc is my second favorite part after Golden Age, and it has my favorite page in the series, which I was really happy to see is many other people's favorite spread in the series, which it almost feels kind of like an insult to say because it's a completely black page, but it's the page where Guts says there's no paradise for you to escape to. And I almost feel like it's like insulting Miura to be like, hey, I know you made all these ridiculously detailed pages, but I'm really just good with the black one with the really impressive message and the really poignant dialogue. So it's such a like weird feeling of like, I don't know. It's a weird feeling of like, I feel like I should appreciate these really detailed drawings of this fantastic architecture of this city, or maybe this like apocalyptic ending event. Now I'm going to choose a black page, but that one is my favorite page in the whole manga, and I do think it has the most important message to me, which comes at such a crucial time right after the events of Golden Age. Do you have any strong feelings on that arc, or?
I vaguely remember Lost Children. I keep hearing everyone say it's their favorite, and I'm like, damn, I should have freshened up on that. But I did just look up the spread, the page. Thankfully, I found it. It's pretty cool. Really captures the isolation there.
Okay, so that's my permission to just go off and like talk about why I like it, if that's okay. Okay, so that comes at a time. I think it's kind of like the first time the point of view switches, and I honestly forget the girl's name. I'm sorry. Her name, it's Jill. It's this girl, Jill. She lives in this small town. Her life sucks. I think her dad's an abusive drunk. Her best friend wanted to find fairies and run away, so she's run away, and their town is constantly getting attacked by like weird monsters and shit. So her life just sucks ass, and she always has these visions of like wanting to go away somewhere else where she can escape her problems. She wants to be transported away either to like a mystical land, but she just wants to escape everything. And she meets Guts, and this is where we get to see like an outside view of Guts, and there's always this contrast of like Guts looks almost like a demon, but then we can see he's fighting the demons himself, so it makes it even more powerful when he takes them down, when he's just a simple human. But either way, she finds her lost friend who ended up becoming a demon. She kind of pulled a Griffith, but not as extremely. She found one of the what are the things that they wish on? They begin with a B.
The Behelits, the Behelits.
Yeah, I think she found a Behelis, and she wished to be a fairy, so she becomes like the queen of these fairies, but they're not like good fairies. Like I think they steal people and like harvest their blood or organs. Anyway, it's creepy.
I mean, I think anything shady that you wish on is not going to end up turning you into something good.
Yeah. So it's kind of like this dark fairy tale-esque aspect, but once Jill has kind of been forced to realize the cruel nature of everything, she like at some point asks Guts to take her away someplace from this, and he has to tell her there is no paradise for you to escape to. And I think that's such an important message, both for Guts to realize after he's been escaping from the reality of his situation and escaping Casca, just losing himself in vengeance, going around killing all the demons. But it's also an important message to the audience, many of whom, you know, we've been talking about weebs and escapism. Like, there is no way to escape the hardships of life, no matter how much you wish there were. You need to accept and face them head on, and you need to fight against them. And I think that's the most important message I've gotten from Berserk.
Yeah, and I think while it's still like vague in my own head, I do, because I did see this comment from T in the comments saying the Lost Children arc is important because it reminds the readers of what Berserk used to be before the Golden Age arc. So saying you can remove it is something I really disagree with.
I agree 100%.
A lot of people will recommend Berserk to you and tell you, hey, just skip the prologue thing, the Black Swordsman arc in the beginning. It's just crap. Just go to the Golden Age arc. But the importance of that, as now having rewatched the anime that includes that part of that, and having it fresh in my mind, is what Guts becomes, like how he is a former shell of himself, who he used to be. And that's what's so important about it, because he's like missing an eye, he's missing part of his arm, he's like angry, he's lost everything, he's just fueled by vengeance. And it's just that contrast, and then it takes you back and then brings you back into that, because it's all of the emphasis of where he's been taken on his journey.
100%. And I think it is I said, like, I guess I could understand if you took it out, but I really don't think you can take it out. I think it's so crucial to the story and themes and his character. So I'm never a fan of people being like, if you just take this one part out, it's like, stop doing that. Just consume the whole thing like everyone else, eat your vegetables and, it's good for you.
Yeah, yeah, and I feel like I agree with that. Eat your vegetables.
Yeah.
It's good for you. It might not taste good, but you gotta
Veggies
do
kind
it.
of taste good when you get older and you just want to eat everything. So
Yeah. I do want to highlight some comments because people are just really articulating a lot of these points well in the comments.
Y'all are spitting.
Elijah Kaivier said, Berserk, I think, is mostly about overcoming trauma and learning to live a peaceful life. And that's why this arc is important for that contrast, because most of Golden Age, even among the wars that they were having in battles, was a slower pace. It was peaceful. Things were good. Guts was finding a place where he belonged. And now he lost all of it. And then that's the importance of the the Millennium Falcon arc, because things are, he's kind of reacclimating himself, or trying to find a way to find peace again. And give himself that permission to not be angry or overcome by his anger, which is reflected or personified in that Berserker armor, which someone here mentioned actually earlier on. Find it pretty cool that Griffith's new form was gained by sacrificing the Band of the Hawks, while Guts' armor is used by Guts sacrificing himself.
Really makes you feel bad again.
Yeah.
That's such a very good comment, but now I feel sad.
And you know what? I think this is a point to transition, because I don't have a favorite spread or page, because, again, it's not fresh enough in my mind. Mm-hmm. I did some homework, but not enough to tell you what's my favorite spread. But there were some really, really good panels from the latest chapters that I see like all around. Those are really good. Yeah. But I think it's a good transition to talk about how, like, with Miura's passing recently, it sort of like, because I wasn't fresh on Berserk in a while. Like, I guess my first thought wasn't so much about, oh, well, Berserk's not going to end. I'm so sad about it. I'm so torn. It was kind of just became a distant thing. I knew it was good, but, it was kind of like, oh, it is what it is. We got enough, and that's it. But I think it is valid, if you do feel sad that, the possibility of the manga not ending and getting that closure, because now, having relived the Golden Age arc and some of the recent chapters, it gets you so invested in Guts' journey, in Casca, even the writing with Griffith and everything, that you do want to see the day that Guts, ends his journey, finds his peace. Like, maybe him and Casca do finally get that happy ending. Maybe they won't, but you want to see the conclusion of that journey, because, like, you've pretty much lived so, like, closely with him, and him, Guts, trying to find his answer in all of the Golden Age arc, to have that all be ripped away. So
and it has been something that's been with us all our lives, even if we weren't, consuming it from birth. Like, it's been around so long. It's, decades old journey. This was this one, I read this really good tweet, and this was when I made the transition from being like, this sucks and it's sad, to like borderline crying. Like, this was like this really got me. There was a chain going that was, one person was saying, they were talking about how one person was like, I was dozens of chapters into Berserk when I realized that Guts was not a guy with a big sword, but the guy with a big sword. I was seeing the moment of creation of a character type I've known practically since I was born, and I think the original will not be surpassed. Person 2 replied saying, Guts is one of the only big guys with swords, if not the only, who physically struggles against the weight of his weapon. It's not a design element or a fashion statement. It's core to who he is, what he fights, and why he fights. I can't think of any other character like that, which is a good enough comment on its own. And then we get to the comment that made me want to cry. And it said, it's the embodiment of all his trauma, his burden. It's him using everything bad that has ever happened to him to stay alive by whatever means possible, and later to protect the people closest to him. I so wish that I could have seen him put down the sword himself one day. And I was like,
yeah, it's definitely all the scars of everything he's gone through. And Yeah, that putting down the sword one day, like again,
Like,
when it wasn't fresh in my head, I was like, you know what? Yeah, but now that it's back in my head, it's like I do want to see that day. And it's crazy how it's a fictional character, but I feel so attached to seeing that story end because I feel like that's why it touched so many people's hearts because most of the time with authors, especially with well-written stories and with Miura, he was able to communicate with his fans, you know, that those feelings through the manga. Um,
yeah,
yeah,
it's just so interesting to see such a series that is most that was it's such an interesting series because I think something I've seen in a lot of the interviews is that Miura was like a huge fan of like shoujo manga and the emotional experience of shoujo manga, and I like thinking of it now as like Berserk has all of the like it has like this like really manly tough exterior and then maybe this like more feminine like soft emotional core, and the combination of the two has really created this truly human experience that's rare to experience anywhere else. Like you get everything of like the hard and the soft, like everything coming together in such a way that feels so personable that I think every human can probably get a connection out of it, you know? And
yeah,
it's like it's not one or the other. A lot of times it feels like one or the other, but this is all of it together. And I think it captures all of these great elements that we see in other series as well. And that's what makes it stand out and connect with everyone.
yeah. Also, someone mentioned here about their favorite spread. I think Guts looking at his
Mm,
new family on the beach is my favorite
uh,
spread. The close-up panel to his eye says everything.
that's like the you know, I never want to say an element of Berserk is underrated because I don't think any element is actually underrated. Like it's pretty highly rated. It's very much appreciated to the highest degree, but the visual storytelling is just so next level that I've seen a lot of people say effortless, and me and my friends have been trying to not I've been trying personally to not say effortless because I know how much effort goes into it, so I don't want to like undermine just how much effort goes into it, but I'm trying to now say the seamless approach is just so next level. Like, I don't think anyone is possibly as good at visual storytelling as Miura. Like, his visuals just tell the story in a way that I'm like, I'm so bad half the time at like, I'm not saying I'm like visually illiterate, but like a lot of times people I think are able to pick up on small nuances better than me. But with Miura, I think he just says it in such a perfect way that we all get it. Like we get it. Like the background we're looking at, they're not saying anything, but it captures the emotion so perfectly.
Yeah,
And
I
that
think
panel is a great example. The one of him looking at Casca, his new family, just like the close up of Guts's eye and how he's like looks alive is just so impressive.
yeah, I actually think some of my favorite moments in Berserk are the tender moments between him
Hmm.
and Casca because
Hmm.
he's so emotionally vulnerable,
Yeah.
and he's able to be, and it's that's what it's really about at the core of who he is, and that Miura is able to express that both non-verbally with just the artwork, the hesitation of Guts to get close to people and all that stuff, as well as and he captures it concisely with the words.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and actually, the other thing I wanted to bring up, since we're on the topic of Miura's passing and sort of Berserk and the artwork and all of that stuff, how do you feel? There's been some conversation about it already, obviously, with Berserk being completed posthumously,
Hmm.
after his
With his
death.
assistants.
Yeah, because I don't know, has it been confirmed? Is still speculation, still a rumor?
I think it's still speculation, but there was a lot of talk about like him training his assistants and he might have notes of like how he wanted it to end or how he pictured the ending. I saw somewhere that he might have had like the last chapter done. I'm not sure if that's like far speculation. I think it's all there's nothing confirmed, but these are the grumblings I've been hearing about. But it sounds like it's a possibility that it might be completed or at least the notes might be released. I'm not sure though. I guess the question is like, do you want it to be finished posthumously, or do you just not? I don't know. I mean, the way I see it is because I was thinking about it is, I think people will consider this the end of Miura's Berserk, no matter what comes after. Like many people will just consider this the end. This is the last thing he worked on. this is kind of the cutoff point. So I think it's fine to release the rest afterwards and let people do what they may. If Miura had those wishes, if he wanted people to know, then I think that's totally fair because people will make the differentiation one way or another. So
Yeah.
I'm cool with knowing, but I feel like that's kind of like no harm, no foul, as long as that's within his wishes. What do you think?
Yeah, we're getting in the chat that they saw one of his assistants say on Twitter that they'll do their best.
Oh, wow.
So
that's
I
awesome.
mean, I get it from both sides. I think totally valid if you don't want to see Berserk completed. Like you don't feel like it needs to, because I do feel like most of it really comes from the reaction to other people where their first thought was like, not Miura passing, but we're not going to get our story finished. We're not going to get our manga finished, and kind of not being sensitive to like this man just, kind of died.
Which is sad.
But it's understandable if you wanted to see it end. And I think, as Shaw was saying, I think it's more of if it does continue on, it'll just be seen as, okay, this is the end of Miura's era of Berserk, and that'll be noted. Like Miura's era of Berserk was this long to this long, and then it was just kind of completed, because a lot of works have been completed posthumously, And go ahead.
I think Basim Sands puts it perfectly. They say Berserk was Miura's life work. If Miura wanted it to be completed, then it would be the greatest way to honor him by someone else finishing it. However, if Miura didn't want anyone else to do it, then that's that. Best to respect his wishes. And I do think that's what's most important. I completely agree with that sentiment.
Yeah. And it really, and that was what I was going to say at the end, that it really comes down to his wishes. Like if he specifically said, I want my assistants to finish it and maybe get the money from it and it have to pay, for their careers, or however he set it up, then that's what should be done. And not anyone, if you have a problem with it, that's your problem, but that's what the author wanted. Now, if he said like, hey, I didn't want anyone else to complete it, then okay, that's a different story. As long as it's not being treated as like a money grab, kind of, which I don't think they would do.
No, I don't think
if it's not being like treated like that, like, oh, let's, kind of keep making Berserk to, high selling property. But if it's the author's specific wish, then that should be respected. So,
I agree. I think it is. I think it's a common sentiment that we've been expressing, though, that I think it's going to be considered a masterpiece either way. I'm personally at the point where, say we don't get another chapter, it just ends like this. I have no qualms about considering it a masterpiece, a landmark of the industry, one of the best pieces of fiction I've consumed. Previously, I think I thought it needed more of an ending, but seeing the chapters and everything, seeing where it ends off, I'm like, I'm pretty good. I've gotten a lot out of it, and I do feel like I've had a fulfilling 10 out of 10 experience with it, no matter what what's it?
I think
loose ends may exist.
I think it's because it's so character driven that like if it was more of a plot driven like thriller where it was dependent on that ending, like let's say if you got 3/4 of the way through Knives Out and that's it, like you didn't get the rest, I don't know, that'd be a tough sell to know whether this was a masterpiece. It's so contingent on where this goes, but it's so character driven and it's so based on Guts' journey and where he's going that you've kind of seen enough where you can just imagine the rest, where you kind of like, you hope that he was on his path to, salvation or redemption or something for himself. And, that's, you got enough.
A lot of the cool sentimental comments I've seen are like, Miura left it with Guts and everyone kind of at peace on this island where they're like mostly at peace. That's just so fitting. Hopefully he feels at peace. And I thought that was like a very nice sentimental way of looking at it that I didn't initially think of like they're on Elfheim, they're not going to get attacked, and maybe that's just a great place for them to heal and like live out the rest of their days. I don't know, like I don't think that's the ending that Miura had in mind, but I like thinking of that as like, they're able to kind of be at peace and be happy. And I don't think anyone's earned happiness more than Guts and his crew.
And the last thing that he happened to see in the last panel was the vision of his son,
Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah, it could go like, I don't even know if that's supposed to be like, something scary or not, or if that's just something like gratifying, but that's just like an interesting way of ending off with it. So
yeah, and they were
a lot to
already
think about.
they were already having like revelations and parallels between him and the Skull Knight, and sort of driving home the point that, you know, his path could potentially lead him in this same way, kind of reinforcing that Guts should choose something else, should, you know, not let himself get consumed by his own hatred, which I think he's been pretty good about recently, ever since joining up with everyone. But
yeah, it definitely put things into perspective. He can think about Griffith and not immediately lose himself. That's a great going back to favorite panels. The one spread of Gut, it's like 4. It's divvied up into 4. I know you've seen it. It's Guts going rage mode, then he starts hearing Casca, and she like pulls him back into himself. That's just such a great like visual representation of his conflict in the series, of like he's overcome with rage, he's overcome with like nothing but anger, but realizing that Casca is something worth fighting for has pulled him back into himself. And it's beautifully drawn, it's beautifully created. That's just like another perfect panel that says so much in just 4 panels.
yeah, was that in the recent chapter? Was that
No, that's back in Falcon of the Millennium Empire.
Yeah,
I'll look it up.
I just remembered in the recent, like latest chapter, the little witch pulled him back when he put on the Berserk armor.
That's happened a lot too, but this one was like Casca, like him seeing Casca and realizing like to come back.
I do love that panel of the. I've seen it recently on Twitter, which you know, Guts is covered in darkness, and then the little witch is like she's like a light pulling him out.
Yeah,
I love that panel. So. Rich JJ says the Moonlight Boy appearing potentially pointed to a meeting between Griffith, Guts, and Casca after so long, because
that
Griffith
makes sense.
is everywhere.
Well, it didn't. So, like, someone can explain this to me, because I think that it's like Griffith has taken over the body of that, but like the Moonlight Boy is like another entity. That kind of went over my head a bit, but
I heard something along those lines. Again, I'm not too fresh on it, so if anyone in the chat wants to educate us, explain that to us more clearly, because I know it's something like that, but I'm not too sure. I don't remember the whole part about, you know, Casca's son.
Yeah, it kind of escapes me a bit. I'm just a bit like, I'm not sure what that is.
And while someone's answering that, I did want to touch on something that I found interesting, that I heard that Miura like actually found, like, after all these years of just working solely on Berserk, he still found it fun. Like, he still enjoyed it. He still enjoyed making manga. And I've heard differently from other mangaka, apparently, that they don't, like successful ones, that they don't enjoy making manga, the actual process. They don't enjoy it as much anymore.
Yeah, especially they said, it was like something like, do you still have fun? And he was like, I wouldn't keep making it if I wasn't having fun. I still find the process fun. And that's just so like heartwarming to hear, because it's such a grueling process. It makes sense to lose your passion for it, especially after 30 years. I can only imagine. I mean, can barely do anything consistently for a week, let alone 30 years.
I heard that I don't know if this is correct, maybe you know, that the creator of Haikyuu didn't actually enjoy like making manga as much anymore.
I think they got to that point, especially towards the end, where they didn't have as much fun. I think they liked it a lot originally, but I think they just got to that point. But I think that is a quote from them of like losing their passion, which makes a lot of sense. They were doing it for 9 years, which is, you know, a fraction of 30, but still like 9 years consistently making top tier stuff is like,
especially weekly
is so like grueling. I know the weekly schedule is just unreal. I found a link to the panel if you want to see it.
Oh yeah, sure.
I'm sending it in our private chat.
Okay. Hopefully no one feels left out.
I think they know. If they don't know, I'll send it to everyone. Link to everyone so they don't feel left out.
Good. What was I gonna say? Working like a dog every single week does that to your passion.
Yeah, I think it's amazing that he could still retain the passion. I read this other funny story that was when he switched to digital, someone was saying the people who helped transition him to digital were like, oh, now that it's he's able to do this more seamlessly, hopefully it'll be easier for him. And then he realized he could zoom in on a pixel level and correct all of his mistakes on a pixel level. So then he ended up taking more time because he's such a perfectionist that instead of just like, you know, doing good and calling it a day, he's like cleaning stuff up pixel by pixel. So I think that's just good insight into the type of person he was. Like, good was never good enough. He was always trying to improve himself. And that's something that's so evident in the last section of Falcon of the Millennium Empire, the one where Griffith is going to war with, I shouldn't remember his name. Looking it up. I still won't say it correctly, but everyone knows who I'm talking about, I think. It's the other kind of like
yeah, Amruth says here, there was one interview where Miura's editor says how when Miura switched to digital, he used to color every individual pixel.
Yeah.
And like reading that and hearing about that, it's it just makes me think like it actually reminded me of George R. R. Martin's process with A Song of Ice and Fire, where he just like focuses so much painstakingly on the detail and he kind of gets lost in it and writes like 2,000, 3,000 page manuscripts that are eventually like cut down. But I think he just like he goes at his own pace and kind of figures it out and really gets into the detail. And I think he's commented before that he's not as talented as a writer as other people, other successful writers. So he has to put in like more work into it, which I think also Miura might have felt that way about himself too. I think I might have seen that in an interview. Correct me if I'm wrong.
It's so funny. And you can tell that like just having that feeling, it shows like next level talent to me of like the fact that it's like it's never good enough is I think a talent in and of itself. Like feeling of like trying to reach that level. So chat thanks Amruth. Ganishka, it's like, so that was the antagonist of Falcon of the Millennium Empire for Griffith, and that's when they rage that like next level war, and he like Ganishka turns into like this like tree cyclone thing, and that's when you start getting like 11 spreads back to back of like the most unreal art. And I at first my eyes are so bad that at first I looked at it and I'm like, oh, like that's pretty wild, and then I like zoomed in on it and the detail of each panel. I was like, my eyes are literally not updated enough to process it. Like I'm too obsolete to fully process it without going out of my way to realize just how impressive they are. Yeah. So it was just unreal stuff. And I was reading that mind blown. And my first reaction was like, you don't have to do this. We're already here. We're already amazed. Like you didn't have to do any of this. Like this is so impressive, but it's just so like,
I mean, I was just staring at, again, I'm going to talk about more recent stuff, but in the Fantasia arc, when Rickard is approaching the castle of the Falconia Empire, and he's just the scenes of just the structure, you know, the structure of the whole freaking like castle and how that all looks and all the wings coming out of it. And I'm like, this took a while.
This took so long. It's just amazing stuff. I do want to touch on this too. If this is one of the best threads I saw was the mangaka for Hajime no Ippo. He wrote a really impressive thread. I don't have it on hand, but it was really emotional. He was one of the first people I saw who commented on Miura's death, and they both kind of started around the same time, with Miura helping him out with his first manga, and he was I think it was like 18 and 19. Like, yeah,
I read that, and it was really good. I don't know if there was more to it, but I did read that.
I think that was it. That was it.
Drew the Takamura drawing for him. Mm-hmm. Miura did. Miura drew the drawing for him.
And he remembered seeing Miura's like art book, and there's so many sketches, and he was like blown away by it. And he was commenting like, you know, he's like Berserk was always with him, just something he was always working on. And it was, you know, it was cool. He got to be there for that process, and they got to both be publishing at the same time. You know, I always love when like peers comment on each other's work when they have such obvious respect for each other.
Yeah. I just finally saw this panel that you sent me.
Yeah. I feel like you know the one. I just did a bad job at explaining it.
This is from what again? This is
from the beginning of Falcon of the Millennium Empire, when Griffith is reborn, and this is when this is like one of the best parts of the series in my opinion as well. So like Griffith has been reborn, and he shows up next to Guts and Casca, and they're at that like sword graveyard, of
Yeah.
the sword graveyard
The,
for their fallen comrades. And Griffith shows up and he's like, sees them. Guts is losing his shit and he's just like raging in the corner as Guts does. And Griffith says, I am free. I feel nothing. Nothing will get in the way of my dream. And then Guts just starts losing it because he's like, how do you feel nothing? Like,
yeah.
and the way they draw him, it's like just awesome because he's losing his shit. He's not just angry. He's upset. He's like wild. Just
Yeah.
how could you feel nothing looking at this? And he's about to go berserk. And then hearing Casca brings him back because he had realized before then that like Casca was something worth fighting for. It wasn't about just going after revenge. So like bringing him back to that. And that was just like a really cool confrontation and great way to start the arc.
My fiance asked me earlier, like, why is it called Berserk? And when I think of why it's called Berserk, I literally think of that expression on Guts. It's that he's been taken to that point where he's become something not human in his rage. So
I've seen so many memes that are like, I'm about to go berserk, and it's like the funny way you like say the title meme, like I'm gonna go Mob Psycho 100, like. But it's like that with Berserk. But I mean, it's a bit more fitting for Berserk.
I do want to highlight some comments. Oh, actually, back to the Ippo, not Ippo, Hajime no Ippo's author commenting about Miura. So that was a pretty good thing he wrote. So Miura always had Berserk in his mind, but someone in the chat actually mentioned that Randon Lewis said at the age of 10, he's talking about Miura here, he created his first manga entitled Mew Ranger, which was published for his classmates in a school publication. The series ended up spanning 40 volumes.
Wild. That's insane.
But the thing I was going to say about when I brought up the whole mangaka not enjoying their craft and Miura still enjoying his craft, I don't know the specifics, obviously, because he was kind of like, you don't know too much about his personal life and kind of what it was like working on it. But I feel like he did do it at his own pace, I'm assuming, and he enjoyed the art and getting pixel by pixel and the details. And that just makes me think like, because a lot of times toward wanting to be successful and wanting to be able to remain competitive, especially because there's so much competition, you have to kind of make like sacrifices and have to jeopardize your kind of health and go at like a pace that's not comfortable, and it makes you not enjoy the work. So it makes you wonder, like, is it worth it to do that or to go at your own pace and still enjoy what you're doing? Yeah. Luckily in Miura's case, like he kind of was in a unique position where he kind of had it all. He had the fame and the acclaim for Berserk early on.
Yeah, and I think it's like we don't really know how much of the intense schedule really got to him and his health because a lot of it has been shrouded in mystery. Like I think we could see kind of still somewhat of speculation, but with Togashi's story, it's a lot more evident. He was working on Yu Yu Hakusho in the early 90s. There's a lot of pressure put on him. He was the one who kind of released the information of like the average mangaka's sleep schedule and how they get like 4 hours of sleep. They're working like 18 hours a day. There's just no time for anything. And that kind of brought awareness. I'm not sure in Japan, but at least to the West, like that's always cited as like the awareness for how grueling their work schedules are. And you can kind of see the thread of like Togashi worked on Yu Yu Hakusho, then like he works on Hunter x Hunter. His health is deteriorating. Well, his health was kind of deteriorating with Yu Yu Hakusho too. It's just like seeing that schedule that no one should really be working is so grueling. And we don't know to what extent Miura was fully pushed, but I do think it is lucky that at the later part of his life, he was able to kind of release Berserk when he wanted because he had become such a success.
Yeah. And then someone here, Rich JJ, clarified in the chat, basically when Griffith raped Casca, he corrupted their baby, and the demon child follows Guts in Conviction Arc and eventually gets reborn partially as a vessel for Griffith.
Okay, that makes sense.
Some details still aren't clear, though.
Yeah, I'm not sure how the Moonlit Boy plays into that exactly, if that's like another part, but I need to reread. It's just losing me. I hate this comment because it's accurate and it makes me sad that both his first and final manga lasted 40 volumes.
Wow.
It's accurate, but at what cost? And the cost is my emotions.
I mean, it's crazy because I really thought like the only manga, I know he worked on like a few other like one shots, but I thought like pretty much it was Berserk his whole life. So And he actually, same person commented before, Morikawa's thread on Miura hurt to read. You could really feel his pain. No mentor should ever have to lose their pupil. Well, he wasn't his mentor, right?
I think it was for like a short amount of time. He
Okay.
did work under him, but I mean, they did have that. I'm not sure the extent of that. So I won't comment on how much of a mentor and pupil they were, but
Yeah.
you do see some elements of that.
Yeah, and then also when Griffith was reborn, probably Guts' child was reborn as well, and they share the same body. They definitely share feelings because he said that his heart skipped a beat when he saw Casca.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay.
Some wild stuff going on. Wild stuff that I don't remember that well, or never really grasped that well in the first place. A lot of good stuff going on.
Yeah, there was something else that I think, did we talk about everything regarding Berserk? There was something else I wanted to mention, and it like completely slips my mind. In terms of, we talked about if it's completed posthumously, I think we're okay with it as long as it's the author's wishes, or at least it doesn't infringe on what he wanted. Let's see. I don't know.
Morikawa was a year older than Miura. Miura briefly worked under Morikawa as an assistant while they were in uni. That's what I kind of thought. It was like they briefly worked together and they were, peers, but I don't think it was like an extensive relationship because the way Morikawa worded it was like, I think he thought kindly of me. I'm sorry. Like, it was kind of like acquaintances rather than like close friends.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And then as for going back to Berserk, your favorite characters was it the main three? Were there any other characters that were your favorites?
It's tough. I've always said that I generally like the cast, but I don't think the cast is what I'm super attached to. To me, Berserk has always just been about Guts and Griffith and their dynamic, their conflicts, their emotions, their goals. It's always been them to me. That's like been the core of my attachment to the series. But I do really like Casca. I like Jado. I liked Richard backhand. Rickard.
Yeah.
I like the old the blacksmith guy who leaves Guts with possibly the most important words of encouragement. And I really like Sir Pukio. I say his name wrong. I say their names wrong all the time.
Didn't the blacksmith guy just tell Guts, "Hey, don't waste your life"?
Yeah, but he does it in it's like a very impactful like couple page. It was like a very good. I think he's a good character for being such a minor character.
But I felt like in that moment, Guts had already decided, you know what? I'm going to live for my sword. I'm going to just kind of do this.
I think he was like a catalyst for that. It was definitely a turning point. Like the way he words it is like very like impactful.
Like he words the whole like thing about sparks, and that makes Guts like figure like, you know what? Swords have always been with me. I'm going to continue doing that.
Yeah. But it was a really impactful panel. I think the blacksmith guy is worth praising because Guts didn't really come to that only on his own. He realized
I'm not trying to undermine what the blacksmith guy did for him. I'm just trying to actually think about his words, if they had any more significance when he said at the end, when Guts is like leaving his place, he just tells him,
let me find it.
Don't waste your life.
It is something like that. I gotta find it. Why do they have it with no text? It's the one thing I want with text. But Sir Pico, I think that's how you say his name. Yeah, cracks in the blade. Like you're like a walking sword with like cracks in your blade, and like if you keep hitting it too often without like recharging, you'll just completely break. That's essentially what he said.
Okay, that's pretty good. That he needs to take care of himself and not just jump in.
Skull Knight is an interesting character. I don't know if I'd say he's like a favorite character, but I like what he represents a lot. And I think he's interesting. And I did like Corcus a lot as for the role he played. I think he plays an important role of someone who's not in love with Guts, who's not enamored with having dreams, goals. He just wants to survive on a day-to-day basis. And he doesn't look a gift horse in the mouth, but he's also stupid enough to be prideful enough to challenge Guts. And that results in him being miserable for years. So I think he's a good character as well. So there's a lot to love in the cast. And I do like, I say her name wrong too. I got to look it up.
I don't know how to pronounce hers, and I don't know how to pronounce Shirky
or something.
Shirky.
Is that
maybe.
But yeah, who are your favorites?
Definitely the trio of Griffith, Guts, and Casca. I think that's
Yeah.
just very interesting,
Yep.
especially the dynamic between Griffith and Guts. But I also
Yeah.
did love the romance between Casca and Guts, and even how it continues on. Trying
Yeah.
to protect her and all of that stuff. It's very that's a very really cool. And then besides that, I enjoyed the little witch character, but I
I
can't
think her
pronounce her
name is
name.
Shirky. I don't know
Shirky.
if that's true. I've said everyone's name wrong. I'm so sorry to everyone listening. I know it's my thing. It's my issue. It's not no disrespect intended to Miura or Berserk. I'm just very bad at pronouncing things. Apologies if anyone's offended by that. Yeah, I might be, but yeah, I think it's Shirky. But I think it's a good cast of characters in general. I definitely think the trio itself kind of stands out above everyone, and that's generally my attachment. This also I have to give a lot of credit because this is one of like 3 love triangles I really like, and that's because everyone has their own interesting but complicated yet also toxic dynamic that adds to it and makes it feel very interesting but also conflicting at the same
Yeah.
time. So definitely one of the best love triangles of all time. And you can make a good argument that it's not just like Casca loves Griffith, Guts loves Casca. Like I'm pretty sure there's like very intense emotions between Guts and Griffith as well. I'm
They
not saying
want
they're
each
in love.
other.
Yeah. You don't tell your homies you're the reason I forgot my dream without meaning something behind that.
I mean, you also don't. Your first inclination right after, getting left by your quote unquote, servant, best friend, whatever you want to call him, is to go do the princess.
Yeah. Yeah, that's not a normal
he,
friend
he,
breakup.
he needed to get something out of off his chest.
Yeah, that's a funny way of putting it.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know. I think there's
Sure.
definitely they had some very complicated emotions, and also I don't think I don't know. I'm not gonna get into it.
Yeah, but there's a lot to think about. There's a lot of interesting elements to think about. This is cool. Emruth was pointing out that Miura always treated his assistants right financially and even started a series last year to train his assistants for Berserk. And I also wanted to comment that someone pointed out that uh, Miura was always good at shouting out shoujo authors and works that inspired him, which isn't something you see as often. Like people always kind of like joked but commented that he said Berserk is a shoujo because it has like those elements to it. But it's so cool to see him highlight that other manga genre, which isn't often as discussed as much and isn't as appreciated. And it means so much that possibly the manliest series ever is giving respect to girly, flowery, something known for being girly and flowery, like recognizing those elements in his series. So I think he's like always been a very respectful person who's given a lot of credit and respect where it's due. So it seems like it's not just respect for his craft, but for his character.
Well, I think always, femininity is always kind of downplayed, or people don't see the inherent strengths in feminine qualities. They always kind of put masculinity on a pedestal, and I find it interesting how Berserk, in a way, like kind of touches on that and explores some of that.
Yeah.
Especially when Casca specifically called out for a good stretch of time about being a woman and a woman on a battlefield. And then, even Guts is a little insensitive to her, but he also does realize women have it hard, or something like that. They kind of explore that dynamic a bit. And that's all kind of there. And they explore, sexual assault and feeling powerless, not just for Casca, but also for Guts.
Yeah.
And, having to deal with that.
Yeah. And that's a great thing to touch upon. I was going to make a joke about how everyone looks down on femininity, and then they look at Griffith and they're like, nah, I get it now. It all makes sense.
Because Griffith also falls into that whole ambiguous sort of non-gender conforming kind of role, because he had at that one point the relations with that nobleman, because
which
is part of furthering his goals.
Yeah, I see. Yeah, and I think he definitely felt exploited by that, but he also recognized he put that himself in that position to be exploited for his own goals.
Oh yeah, he did.
Yeah, but it was definitely it was an interesting situation. So that's a good comment. AJ argued that Guts and Griffith have a relationship on a spectrum between platonic and romantic, and I agree with that. I think that's an accurate description, that it is like on that spectrum somewhere between. It's not enough to say, it's not clear cut enough to say they're only friends and comrades or they're in love with each other. It's not that clear.
Well,
It's something on that spectrum.
I think Griffith and Guts, and I am basing this on having seen that interview beforehand about the author Miura and his friend. I think Griffith and Guts see something in each other that they don't have. And so there's like a hint of jealousy and enviousness that I don't have that, but also an admiration, a respect, and it creates a complicated feeling that they want to be near each other or whatever. And I think the most interesting like visual representation I saw of that, I thought it was really cool, is in the recent chapters in Casca's mind that it took place when they're trying to save her. Was Guts is represented as like a dog, like a mad like dog missing a leg and all of that. And then obviously Griffith is the hawk, but also having them fight each other kind of displayed how, you know, what is it? Griffith has always been kind of soaring above and in the air, while, you know, Guts has always been attached to the ground and on the ground level and sort of like tied down to the day-to-day, the grind, kind of being the underdog, kind of literally the underdog.
Yeah, that's so true. I didn't even think of that.
He's
That's
just
a great
this
point.
majestic hawk, and they're kind of like, and they have like a different way of living, and they're clearly different. Like one lives in the sky, one is on the ground, but there's something like there's a connection there. Yeah. So I don't know. It was more of a Miura explained it non-verbally with just his visuals, and I got all of that from it.
I gotta go for like 2 seconds because I have been drinking too much coffee. I will be right back.
I'm gonna open this to questions. So if you have any more questions, I'm gonna entertain you answering your questions, or talking about anything. As I sit here, pondering my existence. Someone play the Guts theme. Play the Guts theme. It would fit appropriately right now. We got some comments here. I think, what is this in reference to? Golden Age has a lot of shoujo vibes, in my opinion, as well. I mean, I definitely agree with that. I feel like it definitely reminded me of shoujo with its slower pace, with its gradual build-up of Guts' character and his relationship with Casca and all of that, and then kind of exploring his vulnerabilities, kind of showing kind of his train of thought, all of that. That was very interesting. So I think that's where those vibes come from. If it's anywhere close to Germany pronunciation, it's probably pronounced sheer plus the CA in can. So Shirka. Oh, okay, that makes sense. It makes a little more sense than Shirki. So Shirka. Because Shirki reminded me of jerky. I don't know. Let's see what else. Taking inspirations is common, of course, but envisioning something powerful and impactful from your inspirations and using their best elements is just pure artistry. Yeah, no, I definitely think we all like take inspiration and influence from many other things. But it's kind of like in the execution and how you use that to transform it into something different is what, that's the whole point, to try to make something new. Let's see. Anything else? One of the, I think one of my favorite parts about Berserk, actually, one of the things I was more surprised about with the recent news of Miura's passing was how many things Berserk influenced, from Attack on Titan to some of Tokyo Ghoul to Cloud Strife in Final Fantasy VII to, I think, Kizumonogatari. I don't know how. I just heard that it did influence it.
That's a good question. I actually don't know how it influenced Kizumonogatari. It's a good question, but
and I haven't taken the time to think about it either. So
yeah, if someone has a good example of why that's true, I would love to hear it. Like, not doubting it, I just couldn't make the same connection I could with like Final Fantasy VII.
Yeah. And then we got a question here. Do you think Miura started his hiatuses specifically due to his heart problems, or do you think that his acute aortic dissection was completely separate from that? I couldn't be able to tell you. At that point, it would just be speculation, unless they said that this was kind of troubling him throughout his manga work
Yeah.
in something.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not really sure. I think the one thing that people always kind of questioned, which is looking to be very inappropriate in retrospect, is his passion for his work. And I definitely don't think he had a lack of passion when making Berserk. Maybe he had trouble figuring out the direction he wanted to go in, but I also don't think he would have. I don't know either. I don't really know, but I definitely think it probably prevented him from some things and he would have liked to do more, but I don't really know like how the his illness really played into everything.
Yeah. I do have to say one thing though, like it's common, not just in with anime, but in general, like when an author takes kind of too long to put out the content or the story and kind of joke about their hiatuses. I mean, I've been guilty of it in the past, but definitely not going to do that, in the future.
Yeah.
Again.
Yeah, I think it's important to remember, especially because I think we've all made a hiatus joke here and there. We've all kind of maybe underestimated or undervalued artists who have taken their time to try and work on something due to whatever reasons, personal, physical, mental, whatever. Like we don't really know their circumstances. But I do think something I'm going to keep in mind moving forward is that to get to where these guys are, they had to put in, guys and girls, just mangaka in general. I meant that is like, everyone. They've had to put in so much work, passion, dedication, everything to get to this point. And they have so much more passion for this than I could ever imagine. I don't think they would easily give it up because of something like not caring, laziness. I don't think they're in that position because they just like got lucky one day. It seems like they all worked very hard. They all have a lot of passion and they all really do want to complete their works that they set out to start. So I think keeping that in mind, I'm not going to underestimate the reasons as to why they'd want to step back.
Yeah. No, I definitely think they all have their own kind of reasons and what they're working on, whether it's health related or just, I don't know. But I definitely don't think he lost his passion at any point. I just think, he probably spent a lot of time crafting that artwork. I mean, like each panel is so lovingly crafted.
Yeah, definitely.
I got someone said here that Zenji-kun said, I have been checking out the shoujo Kaze no Ki no Uta. It definitely had a lot of influence on Berserk. I haven't heard of that one.
I haven't heard of that until recently, and it looks like that also inspired Utena a lot too. I see a lot of comparisons between the two. So this one looks really interesting. I think it's also the like Guts Griffith dynamic as well as some of the visual imagery of like, feeling like an outsider and a prisoner by the system. So it looks like this one would be cool to read and just see like how many modern connections we can find.
Yeah. Basim Sands adds, seeing what happened to Miura, I'd be perfectly fine with Ayazawa and Yoshihiro Togashi permanently remaining on hiatus. Their health matters above all else.
Yeah. For those who don't know, Ayazawa is the Nana mangaka. She has been on hiatus for I think 10 years due to health issues as well. Yeah, and everyone I think knows Togashi is because we've mentioned him before, mangaka of Hunter x Hunter and Yu Yu Hakusho. So I would agree. I think their health is more important, and I think they've also succeeded enough with what they've already created where it's would be great to see an ending for those works. But I've gotten so much enjoyment out of what they already have that like, their health matters more either way. So I agree.
I mean, it reminds me of what's it called? Because that happens also, I think, happened in the West with definitely a Song of Ice and Fire, but also I remember Stephen King once saying, I think in his book or in an interview, he was mentioning how he was working on the Dark Tower series and like the seventh novel hadn't come out, and then an old lady that had been reading it for years was kind of like getting really old, and she was worried like she was gonna die soon, so she like sent him a letter asking him like if he could tell her the ending. Because she just needed to know. She just needed the closure. So, and she didn't know when it was coming out. But he already finished them, all of them in like 2005.
Did he end up telling her, or was he like, "Don't worry, it's coming out"?
I don't think he told her. I'm not sure.
Oh, that's cool.
Maybe he did. I don't know. But I just found it funny. Like she like we just need that closure. It's understandable.
Yeah, it is understandable. Shout out to Tezuka for creating 250 plus manga, which is just crazy to think about. I did not know he made that much, and that is ridiculous to imagine. I don't know how one does that.
That's insane. How do you? Is it like 250 like what like one shots included?
Like how many? Yeah, like how many one shots and how many like How many volumes are included? Because that's just ridiculous.
Yeah, I heard about this one. This comment that just came in. Interestingly enough, Berserk was heavily inspired by Guin Saga. I don't know how to pronounce it. Whose author also died before being completed. Another author took over her work for the last couple of volumes. I think it was
wow.
her. It wasn't it her assistants that took over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's sad too.
That is sad. But it's kind of the whole theme of Berserk. You know, you can't control what happens in life. You just kind of have to
keep moving forward.
Keep moving.
Keep struggling.
And then how do you feel about, actually, while we're talking about it, normally people point to, you know, seinen manga and Berserk, by example, being more of the superior, you know, type of manga to like a shonen or to anything else because it's, you know, seinen. And I have to kind of include Berserk here because I think Berserk is probably like one of the best examples along with some others.
I think it's like, I always thought it was kind of pointless to judge media based on their like demographic or genre. I think it's like R-rated movies inherently better than PG-13 movies because they're like for an older audience. I don't think so. I think it's so arbitrary because, you know, everyone can point out so many great seinen manga, but like there's a lot of bad ones out there that exist too. It's not all like they're not great because they're seinen manga, and I know a lot of people's reasoning is that like they can be more gritty, more gory, they can be more graphic or more mature, but like that also means they could just be like more bloody or more edgy, and I don't think that's the appeal for some of the top seinen mangas like Berserk, Vinland Saga, or Vagabond. I don't think that's the appeal for them. I think people like how they have those elements and then they bring it back to what's important, which is, you know, in Berserk, obviously, like finding yourself in society, not being overtaken by revenge, similar to all of them, actually. It's like establishing yourself as a person. And I think you can do that in just about any story, even if that does seem to be a similar theme to seinen manga, is like contrasting the harsh, gory violence with what's important in real life. So I think you see like a lot of the top tier stuff are in that demographic, but I don't think it's like the end all be all of like good storytelling.
Yeah, because I feel like sometimes people see the themes in like shonen, which are more, you know, feel good, or I wouldn't say like surface level, but you know, if you compare it to what Berserk is tackling, you could say it's more of, at least it doesn't show you the cruel realities of the world, and people feel like you need to see, you know, the cruelness of the world. You need to see that things aren't easy, you know, that things are messed up. So,
but then you have every counterexample like Hunter x Hunter, you got Full Metal Alchemist, got Attack on Titan, like there are so many examples of shonen manga that have also been like very brutal in their portrayal. They're just not as necessarily graphic, but they still tackle very harsh subjects. So I think it's like you can point out examples either way. One of the examples I like bringing up is everyone thinks that Nana is a yosei. I think it's called yosei, but I've been calling
Josei.
I thought it was josei, but I think I'm wrong. They're like, oh yeah, Nana's a josei because it tackles more mature subject matter, and then they're surprised to find out it's a shoujo, and it's like, yeah, you know, it's not the demographic tag is not the end all be all for mature subject matter or quality. And I think
it still surprises me that Chainsaw Man is a shonen.
Exactly, like you'd be surprised just with what's in demographics. Also, K-On! Is a seinen.
Really?
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yep.
Wow.
Nanyan Byori and K-On! Both seinen manga. So it's like, you know, a lot of times it's helpful because it tells you the general demographic, but also times it's just what magazine they fall in, and it's not indicative of anything.
I'm curious, what makes them seinen? Just
they're in a seinen magazine, yeah.
But that's it? No, not the themes or anything?
No, there's generally no. You can find commonalities, but there's never going to be like every seinen manga has these themes, or like every single one. All right. It's just they fit in the magazine. So
hold on. I'm gonna move K-On! Up on my list now that
you know
it's a seinen.
Now you know it's a serious show. Now it's deep stuff. What else is it? Is it Yotsuba, Aria, the Aria series? It's the Aria the Origination, Aria the Natural, Aria the Origination. That's one of the most I say this with love because it's one of my favorite series. It's one of the most snob approved slice of life series. It's like the elitist slice of life series. That's in a shonen magazine too. So, you know, you never really know.
Yeah. So
and Devilman was a shonen. So it generally, like, there's general commonalities, but it is essentially meaningless.
It's difficult sometimes when talking about anime, and I don't want to veer off too much from Berserk, so I am going to bring it back. But it's difficult sometimes, especially when we're in this sphere, in this community where we're speaking and we're saying our opinions and we're talking about things. It's difficult sometimes to like find the label for what we're talking about, because you'll say this is a shonen, this is a seinen, but at the end of the day, all it means is it's a marketing demographic.
Yeah.
It's not a genre, but it's so easy to describe it as a genre. So it's like, it's hard to be like, all right, then what do I call this to sort of get my point across that this is similar to this or follows this formula? At least with Berserk, you can clearly say, you know, it's a dark fantasy. So there is a genre there, you know, but it gets tough when you're trying to talk about like a battle shonen. Like you have to specify like a battle shonen.
Yeah.
You know, but it's really, you're just saying more of a battle oriented manga. So.
Yeah. And it's definitely, you can see commonalities between Berserk, Vagabond, Vinland Saga, all kind of dealing with similar things in different ways. Like they do have that kind of similar element to it. But I think it's like, if you use the demographics as kind of a guideline, that's good, but not a rule. If you're like, this is what seinen is, and then you're like, well, I can point out Hoseki no Kuni, K-On!, Nyan Byuri, like all these other series that don't seem to fit in that, but are still in that same demographic. Then you're like, okay, I'm starting to see more of what the medium has to offer. But I just bringing it back to Berserk. Berserk is not great because it's a seinen. It's great. It's a great series that happens to be seinen.
Yeah. So I think that's really pretty much really well worded. You know, that's the point. It's just it happens to be a seinen. And then on Berserk, and I think we've been going on for a while here, so I think I
went by kind of fast in a weird way. I didn't expect it. I was wondering if we wouldn't have enough to say, but I'm like, no, we could. Berserk is eternal. We could just keep talking about it forever.
There's just so much to say, and I feel like I already ran through like all the stuff that I'm like, oh, this we might not get to all of this, and like, oh, you know, we got to all of it. Did you have any like personal like takeaways from Berserk, from reading and experiencing Berserk? Anything that, you know, kind of it taught you, whether it was just the themes itself or, you know, something that, you know, resonated with you specifically?
I think it is just kind of, I feel like it feels a bit cliche at this point, but I think I had my like anime left a big impact moment on me before I read Berserk, but I think reading Berserk and reinforcing those ideas of like continuing forward, struggling, but like continuing forward with life, I think it just like reinvigorated those feelings I've had, which it does seem to be everyone's general takeaway. But the way they're presented in Berserk, it's so, you can't help but think like, Guts has been to hell and back. He's had the most miserable life. If he can push forward, I can push forward. That's generally what I think. And I think I read Berserk before COVID. So sometimes when like times are tough with COVID, everyone's doing poorly. It's like so nice to think back to Berserk and think of how it's such a brutal, violent series, but ultimately conveys a sense of hope, inspiration, and positivity towards the future, which is not something you'd expect to see from this black and red series with like so much blood and guts. But like the fact that it does portray such hardship in such a brutally honest way and still can say life is worth living, life is worth pushing forward, it's worth making connections with people, makes that message feel so much more genuine.
I mean, without the contrast of the darkness, you can't see hope or light. So that needs to be there in order for you to see something more, I think. But I can get how you feel like that's cliche, but it's important though.
I wouldn't say it's cliche. I think you're right. It's the contrast that makes it come to life more. I think it's like, because of that, it's almost emphasizes everything even more. It feels more earned.
Yeah, because it really, really takes you all the way to hell and back to make you really appreciate that there's more to just revenge or getting that satisfaction, because that just kind of hurts you and tears you away in the process. And it also reinforces the importance of protecting those things that you already have and that you love. But one of the things that I did take away from it at reading it again and experience it again is just that whole existentialism bit, and just feeling like, you know, Guts feeling like I don't really have a purpose. I don't have that great grand dream, and is it okay to just kind of exist or live a peaceful life and kind of do that? And just even if he hadn't really found his answer yet, just the feeling of hey, he's going through it too, and it's like it makes you feel like, okay, it's not just me. I'm not just in this weird place, and like I'm the only one feeling this way. But
yeah.
I also found it like I remember when I'd see, and I guess because it wasn't fresh in my head, but I'd see a lot of people reference like online, like, I'd always go to Berserk. It would help me get through the tough times, and I'd always go back to it. It's a manga that really, taught me all of that. And when I read it at first, I didn't really experience it like that. So it was just kind of like I read it to kind of see what would happen and like kind of all the twists and turns. So when people would say that, I just wouldn't get it. I'm like, okay, if they saw that, cool. But now reading it again, it's like, I feel the same way.
Yeah.
So like now I want to go back to it. I feel like it is helpful to just kind of like when you're having a tough time to just get that reminder of, that life, even when it seems at its bleakest, you can still come back, bounce back. It just depends on how you choose to respond to it.
Yeah, I think something that was really evident when everyone was posting different panels is that like almost every panel that I've seen posted can relate back to this current situation. And one of the ones that I saw that like really stuck with me amongst the like hundreds of panels I've been seeing, like I've seen like so many, I've seen like the whole manga at this point. But one I saw that I think you'll remember because it came kind of recently was it was like after Guts tried to connect with Casca after she was reawoken, and then she was triggered by the pass of the eclipse, so she couldn't even like listen or hear him. And it's like after all this, it's like, oh no, it's like another bump in the road. Like how can they be reunited after all this? So then Guts is he's like by himself, and he's like on the edge of a cliff. He's not going to jump off a cliff. He's just at the cliff on the island, and he's like, the hell do I do now? And then Skull Knight comes out of nowhere, as he does, and he's like, you bear witness to the end of your journey. And he said, it's not always a happy thing. And that was the end of a chapter. And someone posted that. And I remember reading that, and that was like a cool moment. But I'm like, it's like every panel we see is almost like more hints or reminders or just advice from like Miura on like how to cope through life. Like every time it's always like, it's always there. And it's almost like he's telling us like how to cope with his own passing through his art. And I like overwhelmed by with how many different takeaways you can have. It's not like a one-time panel. Like it's not like we're seeing one and everyone's like, this is the one that tells us the message of Berserk. It's just everywhere. It's through everything.
A lot of them work really well out of context.
Exactly.
You pull them out, or even like the one that I was seeing a lot, and now I read it in context with Guts holding the flower petal and then just seeing it like, or like letting it go up into the air. And I was like, that was in the recent chapter I read, and kind of him kind of appreciating that was supposed to, in the chapter in context, it was supposed to signify like the soft-hearted side or the weak side of him, embodied into that. But those are the precious things that he holds on to, or something like that.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, it was I think it's just really awesome to see in general. It's like definitely an emotional time, and I'm glad to see so many people have so many great like personal reflections on it, but I think it is sad. It's ultimately very sad just to see any kind of living legend pass on, definitely way too soon before he could finish his work, but I do think Berserk's influence will be felt for decades on decades. I think it'll go down as, one of, if not the best manga created. I think it's done a lot for just like pop culture fiction as a whole, because everyone who will play Dark Souls, which is one of the biggest video games of all time, they'll know that Berserk helped influence that, and that will bring in more people. It's just so far reaching. I even saw in a thread that was noting all the possible influences, I saw a comparison between Infinity Wars when Thanos is sacrificing Gamora for the Soul Stone.
And after Endgame?
No, I think Endgame is the last one, but okay. Infinity Wars is the first one where he sacrificed Gamora. But it's the one he sacrificed her and he gets the Soul Stone, and that's where you get the meme of like, was it worth it? What did you sacrifice? Everything. And it's got that eclipse and the water background, and it's the same imagery as Griffith right before the eclipse happens, Even thinking that someone on Disney probably saw Berserk and like had a similar color palette and color scheme. Like it's now in one of the, highest grossing films of all time. You can feel Berserk everywhere. And I think that's really cool to see.
And I think now I think even more so, people are going to go and read Berserk even more because unfortunately, it kind of how it is usually when an author, especially an author of his stature, kind of passes away, it kind of gets all the attention to either the people that had already read it, kind of saying, hey, you need to read this, or the people that had been putting it off and now are like, all right, I need to check this out. Yeah. So I think it'll continue to live on in people's minds and just gaining more and more. It's not going to be forgotten. It definitely has a permanent fixture in anime manga. So
and a permanent fixture in our heart.
Why did you have to do that?
I do have on good authority that these big deluxe volumes get sold out. Apparently, like the most recent ones too.
I was tempted to
they're
get
worth
those because they look so good. Especially those are them in your background, right?
They are. I have my dad had the first one and he didn't read it, so then I gave it to my sister. So they have the first one that contains the entire Black Swordsman arc, and then at the end it starts Golden Age. So okay. I think this is essentially the entirety of Golden Age. Okay. I have to get the other ones that are out, but yeah, I mean, they're definitely worth it. It's so worth it to see like the spread behind you and like huge pages. I would recommend it for everyone. I've gone through them, very much worth it. And now I'm probably going to do a reread of these big volumes because I did it online and I'm sure it was good and I could save it so I could post it on Twitter. But now it's cool to just sit back and see it in all its glory.
Yeah, no, I'm tempted to get those volumes, but I'll hold off for now. I figured they were selling out. So if you want to grab those, hop on those. If not, just go watch the 97 anime.
I do want to encourage people who have not seen the 97 anime to watch it because I do think it is a great experience. I'd even recommend watching the movies if you are interested. I don't think it's the best adaptation, but if people are like me and they just want to consume everything Berserk, I think you can have a good experience with both of them. One of my, in my peak watching every iteration of Guts themes from the 8-bit version of Guts theme, piano cover, guitar cover. I've gone through the ringer. Watched a lot of Guts theme on YouTube. I would consider myself a Guts theme professional. And one of them, it's the piano cover of Guts theme, and it plays clips from the 2000. I don't know. It's from the CGI movies. You can watch them on Netflix, whatever. And it shows like a bunch of clips of like highlights during it. And the way this YouTube video just has Guts theme going through these major points in his life just makes me feel like this strong connection to the movie, which I might not have had otherwise, but it's such a holistic experience. I'm just like, give me all of the Berserk. I will absorb it all, play to the tune of Guts themes.
Yeah. You are the Guts theme expert.
I am Guts theme. I cannot play Guts theme and I cannot sing it. I don't know if one can sing it that well, but in terms of consuming every iteration of Guts theme, that is me.
I think if you want to sing it appropriately, you're going to have to do those videos where you have like a different versions of yourself singing the different harmonies and then syncing them up.
Yeah.
If you want to get there.
I become pentatonics for Guts theme.
Exactly. I actually feel like, I was going to say this earlier about Guts theme. It just... listening to it sounds weird, but it feels like an out-of-body experience. Mm-hmm. That's how it feels like listening to it. It's like taking you out of your body. It's just like,
I will continue to use it as a meme for whenever I'm sad, but it's so cool how it works as like the sad meme, but also it's like, no, I just literally listen to this every day.
Yeah. And I will continue to listen to it. It's good.
Yeah. I'm glad it lived up to the hype for you. For everyone else who is not aware of this, Shabes made a video entirely on Guts theme. I was like posting on Twitter one day of like, I love Guts theme so much. I love Guts theme more than you love your mom. Just like regular comments like that. And Shabes told me before he released his video that he was making a video on Guts theme, just like analyzing it. And every time it was used in the anime, like you like look back on it. So if people are Guts theme professionals like us, I would recommend checking it out on his main channel. I feel like saying it is like almost.
So you gotta back it up by linking it.
I do. I will link it.
We're giving everyone homework.
Caribou-kun, I think that's his name, but I feel like I'm saying a racial slur when I say that, so I don't like saying it.
Then just link it.
Yeah, I'll just link it. I will link it in the description, but Oh yeah, so yeah, it's Caribou Kun, like Kun, not like Kun.
Yeah.
But he changed the spelling, thank God. But I felt conflicted from it. But it's a great video. It's a cool analysis of the song. And if you're like me and you just want to experience every iteration of the song, then like an analysis of it is great too.
I think that's my next journey after this, experiencing all the versions of Guts theme. You know,
And I got a list.
To it for a 10
I got a
loop.
list if you want.
Yeah. I mean, I'm gonna enjoy that voyage. So because I will probably be rereading some Berserk arcs that I was blurry on after this, because I felt like damn, I did want to reread some of these parts. So, yeah. All right, I think we've gone on for long enough here. I think we're gonna end it here, unless anyone has anything else to add. We will be off next week. We're taking a break for just a week, just that weekend, and then we'll be back first week of June. So in the meantime, if you haven't, watch 97 Berserk. Watch that. Listen to the Guts theme on repeat. Reread Berserk. Maybe buy the volumes if they're not sold out. And besides that, if you liked this celebration, make sure to like the video. Leave a comment if there's anything we missed, anything you want to add, any little bit of trivia that we didn't get to mention. And
for anyone who wanted to share something but couldn't make the live stream, we will still love reading comments as a way to, continue the celebration of Berserk and Miura's legacy. So, like, please leave us a comment. We will read them all, obviously. Like, this is awesome time to just come together and see how everyone feels about it.
Yeah, definitely. And then also, if you haven't subscribe to the channel, help it grow, help keep the podcast growing. And besides that, we all love Berserk, and I think it's great that we can all share in it, share our thoughts and what we love about it. And most of all, I want to say we're just weebs, but really, I'm going to end it off by thanking Miura for giving us Berserk. All right, it's over.
Thank you. Thank you, Berserk.
Yeah, thank you, Berserk. So I think we're going to end it here. Did you want to do a post show? I feel like we answered everything.
I think we're good because we didn't say we were going to do a post show. So I think we're good.
Thanks, guys. We'll catch you later.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate you.